to actually show up live for everyone and for people to join in. So how is the weather where you are? My condottiero is in the Pacific Northwest right now, and it's pouring rain and snow and all kinds of traffic issues.
Our weather wasn't much better today. I woke up, it was just pouring rain, like you could hear it, and it was just, then it just went cloudy, but our weather has not been very good lately, very cold.
So where are you in the world? I'm, of course, many of you know, in Korea.
I am in Canada. So weather's not very good to begin with here, honestly.
Yeah. You're not in a snowy part, are you? A pretty snowy part?
No, I'm over in the time, so it's not very snowy. It's more rainy, and which arguably either worse or better you are.
If it's cold, I'll be honest. If it's cold, I want snow. I don't want cold rain. Cold rain is the worst.
Can't, especially with here. It'll be raining 1 minute, then it'll be hail, it'll be snow, and it just goes back and forth, and then it's just windy.
Nasty.
And it's just
nasty.
Yeah, you just can't get.
So we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Party with the Creative Contessa. Today we're going to be having some courtly conversations with a special guest. This is Mason from King Henry's Royal Court, and Mason is interviewing various reenactors and living historians and asking them some very interesting questions. So Mason, welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. Very excited, and I've got all the good questions ready.
So my people know me, but they don't necessarily know you. So what has brought you into the reenactment community? Tell us a little bit about your story.
That's a fairly longish story. So realistically, the history part starts earlier, but the whole costume and living, all that stuff, started when I'm 7. I get my first costume, and it's just this basic Henry VIII costume, which, if you couldn't tell, has become much more than that with the channel now. But that's where it all started, because I loved history, and I thought the concept of being able to wear clothing was just a really fun idea, especially, I'm 7, and it's like, this is fun. And I like using my imagination. I like acting. I still like acting, and it's fun. And then, of course, over time, I'm getting more and more stuff for it, and I take it more seriously, and eventually, to get to where we are now, at least. Earlier this year, I started this channel with my friends. It started as just a funny little thing, but now a bit more than that, with some more history and stuff. And so, yeah, it's been a long time of doing this.
Yeah, I think many of us reenactors, living historians, cosplayers, I think we all share a very similar childhood in that we liked playing dress up and we liked pretending it was olden times, right? Whatever, even if we didn't know what that really meant, we knew what it should be.
Yeah, and just doing whatever you could to be like, make it as in your mind as close to what you want. And it's just, it's fun, honestly.
Yeah, so you had some very interesting questions for me. So let's just get right in. And for those of you who are participating in the live chat, if you have questions as we're going through, pop them in the live chat, and I promise you we will answer them. So yeah, let's do it. Let's do this.
So, if I'm mistaken, we're just going to start. Before we start, if I'm mistaken, you're doing this for a while now. And what inspired you to do this?
So yeah, I officially started my living history journey, honestly, when I was 13, and I was in a play, a Robin Hood play, in my middle school's musical. And they gave us, they had some costumes that we got to borrow from the high school Renaissance Fair costume closet, but they didn't give me a headdress. And I knew from pictures that I needed to have a headdress. So my first ever thing that I made was the padded roll headdress, an escoffion, using the non-existent resources that I had at the time, because this was before the internet. That's how old I am. This was before the internet. And, there were no real books in my high school library or middle school library. So yeah, my first ever thing was an escoffion so that I could be the sheriff's wife in a musical production of Robin Hood. But, I started playing dress up, as I said, when I was a very little girl. And I went to the Plymouth Plantation, the Living History Center there when I was 5, up in outside of what was the Boston colony, what's now just Boston. And I remember just loving it. I loved all the people in their 17th century clothes and their 17th century homes, cooking over the fire. Just, for me, it was like stepping into a fantasy world. As a 5-year-old, you don't distinguish between history and fantasy, really. And all I knew is I want to be those people. But also, we were going there to visit the reenactors who portray my Mayflower ancestors, and I was really confused as to why great-great-great-great-great-grandma and grandpa didn't want to talk to me. So, as a 5-year-old, we don't necessarily understand about interpreters and versus real ancestors. So that's really, I think, that's when I pinpoint that journey is probably that visit to this 1620 Living History Center. And then eventually I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up in Delaware, so I was near the National Gallery, the Walters Gallery, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Cloisters. And we used to go and visit all those museums when I was little on a regular basis. So I was basically marinated in medieval art. And those are when we watched, those are the aesthetics that I think probably really formed my early years. And, then you combine that with the fact that I grew up watching public television. So, we watched all those BBC productions. We listened to NPR. So I think my parents accidentally primed me to be a practitioner of medieval living history, even if they didn't necessarily mean to.
I can relate to the 5-year-old thing. That was my first taste of history too. And well, that led me to where I am today. It led you to where you are today. Although for me, I was playing a game on my phone. So that's how young I am. But yeah. So very, what's the word I'm trying to say? A lot of history stuff, a lot of parallels with all of our childhoods when it comes to when we choose to do this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was being in Delaware, I was also surrounded by Revolutionary War reenactments because the Revolutionary War is very big in Delaware's history. The Civil War is a little bit, but we have way more Revolutionary War activity going on. So, of course, on the big holidays at the public festivals, I would see the Revolutionary War reenactors and the women in their stays. And, I really like those clothes too. But for whatever reason, I just came to identify more with the courtly culture of medieval Europe than with the sort of, more egalitarian, less courtly culture of the 18th century. So I think that's probably why I ended up focusing more on the Middle Ages, specifically because of the court life and the literature that I read that depicted this really beautiful world that was completely different from anything that we really have going on now.
When people think of medieval clothing, what do you think that they most get wrong? They get the most wrong about it?
The layers. Honestly, I think modern people, it's the layers. No matter what era you're talking about, it's layers. Modern people especially, look at historical clothing. They see someone in an outfit and they see one dress or one garment. But in fact, right now I'm wearing I guess I'm wearing 3 garments, but the 2 that you can see, that's 2 layers, right? And if I were fully dressed, which I'm not, I guess I could have put on my chapa for this, that would be a third or a 4th layer, depending on how you're counting. So I think in general, it's going to be the layers. And a lot of modern people are uncomfortable wearing a lot of clothing, right? They're so used to the freedom of wearing t-shirts and jeans that if you suggest to them they should put on 3 to 4 layers of garments when it's not when it's not cold outside, they look at you like you've lost your mind. So I think that's where a lot of people approaching historical costuming probably first stumble, is on the idea that you need layers, and you need an underlayer, and you need a middle layer, and you need an overlayer. I think that's kind of generally the issue. I think beyond that, modern people, or people starting out, they probably want to apply modern tailoring techniques, modern lines of cutting to historical garments. So you've got these arm's eyes that aren't either deep enough or narrow enough, depending on how you're looking at them. You've got princess seams everywhere, right? So there's, I think, especially for modern sewists who start taking up historical sewing, for them it can be a little bit of a challenge to divorce themselves from their own training and try to step away from that. So it depends on who it is that's coming at their first set of historical clothing. There's two different main stumbling blocks, I feel like. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, yeah, I agree with the layers. I also, one thing I find, when it comes to historical clothing in general, they mix up all eras. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
It'll be like the Middle Ages, and then they'll be talking about like showing Victorian outfits, and then there's this whole thing. I mean, if you're not really know much about it, you're not going to really be able to understand. But I'm going to be honest, as someone's it hurts my soul just a tiny bit whenever I see a 17th century, 18th century, like 19th century like outfit, and then saying something like the Middle Ages, because it's just, oof. But I agree with you saying layers. This is an English hood I made. There's like 3 or 4 layers to that alone.
Yep.
And then of course you got all the layers that we'll be wearing. And yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I agree. Layers is probably one of the bigger ones. And then of course in media, it makes it worse. Because, they're doing it and they don't know what they're doing at all. Oh, I need to say this because it drives me. Any representation of the Tudor era, they won't have veils on the hoods and their hair is out. You're not doing the Tudor. You are not having your hair right out, especially not if you're a woman. That is not something you're doing in the Tudor court. So it's having their hair out, flowing free, and it's just, it drives me. And then, don't get me started on the Tudors. What does Anne wear on her head? It looks like you gave a child super glue and a couple resources and said maybe they would wear. Not judging the costume team. Nice. Just like not for the time period.
Yeah, it's headdress, certainly head coverings and hair. Like if you're looking at God, okay, so that's different. If you go, I'm actually starting a series with Philip from Irish Medieval History. We're starting to review movies and productions for their clothing and armor, and we've started on Braveheart, and we're going to continue with Braveheart this week. But one of the biggest sins that Hollywood commits is hair for women, is hair and headdresses and makeup, right? Those are some of the biggest sins. Sometimes they'll get the dresses not terrible, not great, but not terrible. But yeah, it's like, oh, well, modern audiences won't think that's attractive. So we have to make these heroines look attractive based on modern standards. And that's why I won't watch many of those productions. And people keep asking me, well, what about this production? I'll say, well, I haven't seen it because I saw the stills and they put me off so badly that I won't watch it.
Yeah. I agree with that. I can't. Sometimes I'll be watching a series, and what they're wearing is just so outlandish. I genuinely cannot do it.
I can't focus.
Yeah, or when they take something that we know happened, but they exaggerate it. Like when there's a time period where being pale is fashionable, and their face is like pure white, and pure white as in like different white makeup thrown on their face, and they just call it a day. And it's just, no.
It's problematic. So I think thankfully a lot of I guess it depends on where you are. There are certainly some reenactment groups where less attention or no attention is paid to headdresses. And I've actually, so I did a video on medieval headwear, and one of the more common comments underneath the video is, because I ask at the end, what kind of headdresses do you wear in your medieval living history life? And I'd say about half the people say, I don't wear anything because I can't stand to have anything on my head. And I think that's a problem that a lot of modern Westerners have. They haven't grown up with anything on their heads. And so now when they reach their adult years and they're told, well, you really need to wear a veil or a hat or a kerchief or something, they don't like the sensation of anything on their heads. So they don't want to be uncomfortable when they're doing living history. So then they just wear nothing. And it's like, oh, but that, I realized a long time ago, a modern person wearing a medieval ensemble, but with their hair like a modern person, looks like a modern person wearing a costume. But someone wearing perfectly medieval hair, the perfect headdress, everything right from here to here, right? Everything correct. But wearing modern clothes looks like a medieval person wearing modern costume.
Exactly.
Right? Seriously, it's so interesting how, if you actually are familiar with fashion history, it's really the head and the hair that really make the medieval look versus the modern look.
Yeah. I'm going to take something to say. It is so nice if you talk to someone who, when I say this stuff, we understand each other talking about it. I want to say I try not to be judgmental, especially about the comfort thing, because on the other hand, I'm not going to expect anyone to make themselves really uncomfortable at a reenactment event. But surely there must be some solution that is more authentic to the look that we can come up with that isn't uncomfortable, right? There has to be something. Or even doing something with your hair, because of course there's lots of different ways. Even under their stuff, they would have their hair done.
If they can even just simple braids, and if you don't have long hair, maybe get some fake braids that you can braid into your hair. I don't know. There's options, but I think the tendency is that, oh, I don't want anything on my head, and then they just decide that there can be no other option than the modern look. So. Yeah, I try not to be too judgmental about it. Though, of course, if you're going there's a difference between, living history events that are more general and reenactment events. Reenactment events have serious strict standards, and they won't let you in the door unless you have everything right to their standards. And if you're a person coming to watch, if you're not wearing the right kit, they won't let you in, even as a spectator, if your kit is not quite right. So, it depends on the event. It depends on the group. Every group determines their own level of authenticity, and that's fine. Every group should be allowed to do that. That's the purpose of having different groups, right? Is you get to choose, I want to be part of this group because they're more relaxed in their strictures, or I want to be part of this group because they're stricter, or I want to be part of both. I have many friends in Europe who are part of the SCA plus part of a more restrictive reenactment group because they want both. They want to have the more relaxed, creative fun of the SCA, but they also occasionally want everything to be 1338 at 4 p.m. So, and I support all of those groups to do exactly what it is they and their members want them to do, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. When people hear the word medieval or Renaissance, what do you think they imagine and what that idea misses?
Yeah. So again, talking about not reenactors, not people familiar with history, I think often they imagine lots of leather, fur, and dirt for medieval. For Renaissance, they probably imagine Henry VIII-ish, right? Something, they imagine Henry VIII-ish, and they might imagine Elizabeth I.
Yeah.
Or they might imagine Ren Fair, what I call Ren Fair chic, which is has changed over the years and is, has moved from being actually kind of sort of authentic looking to being, bodice and skirt and fairy wings, right? So it kind of depends on where they are, but I think mostly for medieval, it's going to be leather, fur, and dirt, and laced up bodices, probably corsets, And Renaissance, it might be Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, or it might be Renaissance fair chic, depending on their mileage, I think.
Yeah.
I think
And
probably for all of it and the women, there's probably corsets involved.
Yeah. The idea when they hear Renaissance, think Henry VIII, that's honestly, I mean, that's what most people's minds go to. You know, you're thinking that. And I mean, realistically, that's what he would have wanted. I mean, Henry was all about, you know, his portraits are all done to make him seem quite literally larger than life. And so I imagine, this is unrelated, but if he were alive, he would like that. But there's so much more to the Renaissance than just Henry VIII, and it's so overlooked because no one ever really, you know, you don't know much about it. That's all you're going to think of. And it's just, oof.
Yeah, it's you know, I actually, so I'm not a big fan of the early Tudor stuff. I rather like, and I like the lines of the mid Tudor stuff, but by the time you get into the second half of Elizabeth's reign, I don't like any of it anymore. Aesthetically, I don't. It's so over, you know, the high fashion. We're talking high fashion, of course. High fashion, you know, it's so over exaggerated. These super long torsos with those super long pointed bodices, and the skirts with the elongated oval shaped hips. And it is not my preferred aesthetic. I much prefer, in that era, I much prefer the Italian fashions. I think they're softer, they're more natural to the body. And you know, there's you know, more graceful elegance and less artificiality about them. But that's, you know, everyone has their own preferred aesthetic, and you know, taste may vary.
Yeah. I mean, I'm here in my basic, just Henry VIII, I guess you would say underwear. I've got my other layers with me, though. I don't know why. But, yeah.
Like, you never know when you may have an emergency full dress situation. It could happen.
Exactly. Like, you know, I might have to do something very important, and I might have to be in character, and I don't want to throw away the opportunity. Because,
I mean, I've got my chopper right here, so you know, I could put it on at a drop of a hat. Sort of. I need a lace.
I've got my doublet here, and I've got, well, I don't even know what I call this anymore, but the outer layer. So I'm, you know, 2 seconds, and I could be ready if I needed to be.
Is that I couldn't really see it. Is that a jerkin or a Waffenrock? What do they call that in English?
Let me put it back.
What they call that thing in English?
This right here is my doublet or a jerkin. You can call it whatever you want. So I guess I'll just put it on so people can see us. Why not?
Right.
While I'm putting this on, I'm gonna be honest. When you start wearing this stuff, I don't know about you, but I find myself just wearing this stuff around the house just for the sake of wearing it. And if you get the right stuff, it can be something you enjoy and something you find comfortable.
I think I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, I end up dressing this way almost every day now because of my live streams. And as I've often said, once I'm dressed, I'm dressed. I'm not changing just to go to the store. So I go out and about dressed like this all the time. And because I have been wearing these kinds of clothes for 30 years now, they're very comfortable to me. I can see how a modern person lacing into man or woman, lacing into a tight garment for the first time could seem very uncomfortable, right? But it is something to which one can absolutely become accustomed with time. And after a while, you might actually start to appreciate the supportive nature of a tightly laced garment that helps you maintain decent posture, and that helps you keep your abs tucked in a little bit better, because the second you relax your abs, the garment reminds you, right? So there's definitely a benefit to this, but I can totally understand how the average modern person putting on a tightly laced garment for the first time might not enjoy the sensation. But once you start wearing these kinds of clothes for any length of time, you will see that looks fantastic, by the way. Splendid. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. Beautiful. Bravissimo. Bravissimo. Yeah. But once you start wearing these garments, you learn how to move in them. You learn how the things you can do. You realize that you can do many things you didn't think you could wearing that many clothes. You just learn how to do those things a little differently. I mean, this is just my Gomorrah, so I'm literally dressed to be at home. This is it. This is a lady at home. Welcome. You are welcome, everyone. You get to see a Florentine lady in her undergarments, technically. So this is how, a lady in 1480 Florence would be comfortably at home. I, however, have tested the bounds of this ensemble. I can do kickboxing in this dress. So I can do a full workout. I can dance, I can cook, I can haul things up and down stairs. I can drag bags, luggage for miles outside, right? And maybe you would have looked at this and thought, wow, what a useless dress. She must really be restricted in what she can do in her day-to-day life. No, not at all. Not restricted in the least. So yeah, I think your point is correct that wearing these things on a daily basis, it becomes comfortable. You just get used to it.
Yeah. I mean, like on your comment about wearing the dress and slouching, this doublet, it feels, everything underneath it, it feels more tough. I'm not slouching as much. My back is more straight wearing this than without it. Yeah. And then, that works out. And one thing, this is unrelated again, but again, it's called courtly conversation for a reason. Every time I put this on, whether I'm in public or I'm making videos, it's always, are you warm in that?
No.
And it's like, no, exactly. Like, the first time I wore it, probably, but then you get used to it. You adjust wearing it. Like when I did my Claire Ridgway interview back in July, I was wearing all this, and before we started, she asked, "You're not warm, right?" It's like, nope. And surprisingly, though, if I'm out in like 20-degree heat wearing this, I'm fine. But I could be wearing a t-shirt and shorts, but I'm not used to wearing that. I'm wearing this so much that it's like I'm just like, no, I can't. And
yeah. I feel, I'll be honest, I feel naked if I'm just wearing, say, a skirt and a shirt. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really going out today, not wearing very much in the way of clothing. This is kind of a little crazy. Oops, I am sorry, everyone. I have completely missed, I guess I didn't miss that much. The live stream is moving, my chat's moving in a different direction than it was earlier. But Laurie has a comment. She says, as someone on the spectrum, sensory overload is definitely a challenge with historical costuming, but I work with my challenges. It pushes me into more research to accommodate my needs, which is fun. Yeah, and I, again, thank you, Laurie, for bringing up that point. I also appreciate that, people on the spectrum and people with other neurochemical situations have different levels of comfort or discomfort that they can tolerate. So I'm not judging. Each person has to decide for themselves what is comfortable. But I appreciate, as Laurie says, trying to do more research to find ways to accommodate your personal preferences is brilliant. And I think people often ask me, I don't know about you, Mason, people ask me, well, or when they're starting their living history journey, they say, well, I really want to be 13th century Welsh. I say, okay, do you like the clothing that 13th century Welsh people wore? Well, I don't know. Well, no. The most physical thing you will do about being 13th century Welsh is clothing. If you don't like that clothing, do not pick 13th century Welsh as your focus of interpretation. I always say you start with clothing that you like, and then that's the era you should explore. Do not pick a time, because a place or a time because of the cultural connections you feel you have. If you don't like the clothing, you will have no connection to that place because you won't wear it. So that's always my suggestion. And surely across the 1,000 years that is the Middle Ages and the entirety of Europe, if Europe is your focus, or Eurasia, if you're looking further abroad, surely within that, there must be some fashions that you like in the majority, that in the majority you would be comfortable wearing. And that would be my suggestion for people. If you want to explore historical fashion by wearing it, then pick clothes you'll be comfortable wearing.
Like, there's no need. Like, if you just because, yeah, I agree. Like, you might like a place, but again, I mean, I wouldn't be wearing this if I didn't enjoy like the 1540s. This would not be what I would choose. If I was not wearing this, I would probably be wearing Georgian clothing, English, like the 1700s.
Ah, right, right.
Because this is stuff that you got to go with what you're comfortable with and what you enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see. There was a comment. Is it too hot? Is it too hot for summer? I'm confident she's referring to your fantastic Tutor ensemble. Or is it like Egyptian clothing, so it provides insulation? So what do you think? What's your view on that?
Well, it depends. Every layer. I mean, with the doublet, of course, that's got openings because that's the fashion, right? And normally, of course, you're going to have it hang out of there. So it airs out. It really does. And of course, the socks, they're made, so they're breathable. Almost everything about this is breathable. And this, I admit, is very, very heavy, but I find when I'm out, I wear this on most of the time. Out in the summertime, I go around walking around because it's fun for me and other people like it. So I'm out and about in this, and I would wear this every single day if it weren't for the fact I can't. But I would wear this every moment of every day if I could. So at first, when you first start wearing it, yeah, it's a bit warm, but you get used to it.
Right.
Now,
Yeah. And I think that's a really key point is that, uh, again, we're modern Westerners, especially, are accustomed to not wearing very much of anything. And so their bodies have regulated their internal thermostat in such a way that it compensates for you not wearing very much clothing. But if you are constantly wearing this kind of clothing in all weathers, then your body just down regulates itself to accommodate that. There will be an adjustment period, right? Like if your first living history event in your 1540 Tutor ensemble is at a 90-degree or 30+ degree event, depending on your system of measurement, you will probably die because your body hasn't adjusted. So you need to maybe not make that be the first time you wear your full Tutor, right? But if you work your way up to it, you start wearing it in the spring and you just kind of continuously wear it as the weather gets warmer and warmer. By the time full summer hits, your body's like, I'm a little uncomfortable, but I'm okay.
And personally, for me, I find it's not the outfit that makes me sweat, but I'm walking around. I walk up a hill, I'm sweating, but I could walk for a long, long time wearing this and it would never be the outfit making me sweat. That's honestly the thing I'd like to reiterate before we get to the next question is that historical clothing, a lot of times people kind of overlook how some things are surprisingly breathable, some things are surprisingly uncomfortable. Because there are some things that you could wear and they're just they're pretty nice, and there's just other things and they don't really look at.
Right, right.
Um,
I think the other key part about, as you said, it's all natural fibers and breathable, or maybe you said it's breathable, but the implication is that it's natural fibers. So that's why your layers, if you're going to do historical clothing, do not cheap out and do synthetics. I know and I understand people's budgets are tight. God knows today's people's budgets are super tight, but it's better to save up gradually, get the money you need in order to be able to afford natural fibers than to just do whatever you can with the money you have and have synthetics for many reasons. Authenticity is none of them. I'm not even on the authenticity wagon here. I'm talking about safety and comfort. One,
yeah.
Synthetics are petrochemicals generally, and we have events. We're doing living history, right? We have events with open flames, and those petrochemicals are infinitely more flammable than natural fibers. And when they burn hot chemical. They give you hot chemical burns that you can't just easily put out or douse, right? So that's why you don't want synthetics. Two is the breathability, right? Like linen is the quintessential moisture wicking fabric. Before there was Coolmax and Under Armour, there was linen. And so you need to make certain that you have linen layers against your skin because it will actually whisk the moisture from your body and with the moisture will go the heat, and then you get evaporative cooling, right?
And I add to that one historical thing. Of course, and I'm not sure about other countries. Of course, I'm assuming a fair amount of European countries were like it. Of course, I focus mostly on England. But if you're rich, you're changing your linens multiple times a day, as much as you want, because if you can afford it, you absolutely are. Of course, there's still the belief time, of course, of the humors and like the belief that, of course, that germ theory exists yet, and of course, so they think you change it throughout the day a couple times, and it takes away all of the bad stuff, shall we say?
Yeah, the
So
miasma. It
linen,
fights the miasma. Yeah.
So not just is it nicer to wear, more comfortable, more breathable, it also has the good historical value.
Yeah, it's I think of course that's another of those, I will probably get to this later, that's another thing, another myth of the Middle Ages that pisses me off, is the dirty Middle Ages and the dirty Renaissance, right? Although in fairness, the Renaissance is probably dirtier than the Middle Ages because all the bathhouses closed down in the 16th century. So
Yeah.
there is actually a likelihood that people did actually get dirtier following the Reformation, because of the fact that all of those Reformationist nut jobs closed the bathhouses down because they were immoral. So, yeah.
But and especially, sorry.
No, go on.
And especially because, of course, medicine is not very advanced, and it won't be for a little while. So you're, not just are you dirtier, you're putting stuff on, especially, I mean, everyone was, if you're rich, specifically Henry, who I focus on especially, of course, a bit unrelated. He had the jousting incident, so his leg is, sorry if this might gross you out, I don't just, but.
No. I grew up in a medical family. We talked about this stuff at the dinner table. You can't gross me out.
Okay. So open sores, pustules, leaking. His leaking, and the doctors won't let it close up. Of course, they believe that they've got to keep it open, so they're cutting it, burning it with irons. And I'm not going to say poor Henry, because he was not a very good person, but he's also making his own medicines. We have record of this, and he is creating himself this paste he can put on his leg, and it doesn't. And it is described in his medicine, his I don't know what you call it. My brain's a bit off, but it says an ointment devised by the King's Majesty at Westminster and devised at Greenwich to take away inflammations and cease pain and heal ulcers, called grey plaster. His prescription book, and he made it himself. So not just is the hygiene arguably worse, medicine is worse. And so, if you got something wrong, you're going to be smelling worse to some degree.
And actually, so it's really funny because, I would debate that medicine isn't advanced, but what it isn't is necessarily correct. It's very sophisticated, right? Medieval medicine is extremely sophisticated. It follows that very complex system of the four humors, and everything has been carefully classified and systematized into categories. It's just that, unfortunately, many of the categories aren't useful for actually treating people. Happily, many herbs actually have many good properties for actually healing a number of issues, viral or bacterial or fungal. Unfortunately, what happens in the 16th century is they start experimenting with a lot more, the alchemy really starts to rise. And so they start experimenting and with a lot of elements rather than herbs that are, oh, baby, not good for you. So we move away from herbal medicine to chemical medicine, and they're using mercury, and they're using orpiment, and they're using all these dusts like ground. They're literally starting to take, old bodies and grind them up at this point and apply those as some kind of mumia, which is, anyway, that's its whole topic. So yeah, the 16th century is arguably a step back in a lot of ways.
Especially because a lot of their medical knowledge a lot of what they believed came from especially the four humors. And so, of
Yeah.
course, they have this old knowledge, but it's old even for them. So, it's a little. Uh,
Yeah, it's outdated. And so honestly, this is something most people don't know. I live in Korea, so I know this. Oriental medicine is also humoral. So the idea of the four humors is something that actually spans the Eurasian continent and dominates medical practice for like 2,500, 3,000 years. So it's not just Europe that believes that. The difference is that in the East they had some other things going for them that were more effective than say they had going on in Europe. But yeah, no matter what, the experiments that start rising in the 16th century are not necessarily for the betterment of medical practice. Yeah.
Are there any depictions of these time periods you think did a good job of representing?
Depictions meaning like movies or productions, like those kinds of depictions. Yeah.
Anything.
This has cropped up a lot in the last week and a half since I basically published a short in which I bitch vociferously about the horrors of Hollywood movies and their misconceptions. So I thought about this. I've thought about this for giving it a good lot of thought very recently, and I came to the realization that all of the productions that I view as being relatively accurate representations of any given period of the Middle Ages are fantasy, actually. So The Princess Bride isn't bad. It's not, I certainly wouldn't say it's, historical, but it's colorful. A lot of the silhouettes are correct. It's actually more of a medieval world than anything that's come out of Hollywood in the last 40, 50 years that I've seen anyway. And Ever After, of course, is a fantastic representation, relatively speaking, for Hollywood of late 15th century and early 16th century clothing for women. For the men, of course, as always, they put Prince Henry in leather pant, leather trousers, leather jerkin, which, it's not the kind of jerkin that they were wearing in that era. But at least for the women, they have them with headdresses and hair being styled. They have them in layers. They've got them in clothes that are actually clothes that existed at the end of the 15th century and into the 16th century. And they're colorful. And also, not everyone is covered in mud and not everyone is wearing rags. So Ever After is not a history movie, supposedly, right? It's a historioid retelling of the Cinderella tale, right? And it's a fantastic way to retell the Cinderella tale, but it's more accurate than any of these so-called historical movies that have come out. Than The King, than The Outlaw King, than King and Conqueror, than any of those terrible princess and Red Princess, White Princess productions that they did. Those were so bad. Yeah, God knows, Braveheart, Kingdom of Heaven, they were all terrible.
One thing about when you get into historical, specifically when you get to the historical costuming part, it ruins a lot of things. You can't watch anything without being like, oh my God, what are they wearing?
Yeah. And it's for those of us who know, and this is the problem, for those of us who know better, it's distracting. I can't get into the story if the clothes are so wrong. It's one thing if, okay, well, that seam isn't exactly in the right place. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, not even the right shape, and not the right colors, and everyone's covered in dirt. It's like, I can't watch this, and I don't want to, and I've got better things to do with my life.
That's part of the reason I have not watched the Tutors, because I wouldn't be able to get past Anne Boleyn without every 5 minutes saying, what is on her head? What is on her head? Why is her hair out? What is on her head?
Oh, it's
But
not
one,
just that. They have her in this evening gown like thing, like this slinky. I saw a still, and I'm like, what is on her body? Why is she dressed? What is and why does her face look like that? Why is she wearing Vanity Fair glamour makeup? Like what? Yeah, I can't get past it. I mean the story, I'll be honest, the story of the Tudors is so depressing that it doesn't I know what's going to happen. It's all bad. The only person who walks away really unscathed is Catherine of Cleves, right? She manages to actually get the sweetheart set up.
yeah,
She becomes the sister of the king. She's the wealthiest woman in England when Henry
yeah,
dies. She's the only one who wins the Game of Thrones in that dynasty,
yeah.
right?
Well, I hate, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, when people will call Catherine Parr or Catherine Parr, whoever you are. I prefer Catherine Parr, it's more accurate. But they'll call her the survivor, the lucky one. She dies a year later during
Childbirth.
childbirth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Meanwhile,
She,
Anna, to
I
live
mean,
on, she gets
I,
money, palaces.
yeah, and her stepchildren like her, right? Her
Yeah,
stepchildren treat her well, and she treats them well. So, like she's the winner. She is the winner in the Tudor dynasty. I mean, Elizabeth, you could say, well, didn't Elizabeth? Yeah, but she had to be queen, regnant for
yeah,
40 years, 50 years almost. That was not an easy job. I wouldn't want that job. No, thank you.
no.
Not in
And,
her
and
era. Uh-uh.
And one thing with Elizabeth, in the interview I did with Leah Toole yesterday, which anyone interested is on my channel, um, we talked about a lot about Mary the First because her first book was about Mary the First. And one thing I think is so overlooked, Elizabeth gets all the credit for so many
She
things,
does. She
but
does.
most of the well-known things she did were things that had the groundwork laid and were going to be done by her sister Mary had she not died.
Yeah.
And everyone remembers Elizabeth as this great person and Mary as violent. But
Yeah.
like I said with Leah yesterday as well, realistically, Mary was one of the least violent people, and out of her family at least.
Yeah.
And another thing we said, people overlook that it's not just the monarch who has power and can do things. And so, of course, yes, 280 people were burned. But how many of those did she actually approve is a question. But yeah, it drives me how people will call Elizabeth all these great names, Mary these horrible ones, when most of the things that Elizabeth did the groundwork was done by Mary, and Mary would have
Yeah.
done those things had she not died.
Yeah. It's
And
it's
like,
yeah, her story. So Mary's story is the saddest. Honestly,
yeah,
her and Catherine of Aragon, right? Like Catherine of Aragon's trajectory is just straight down. She goes from being, in essence, the last medieval queen of Europe, the last true medieval queen, a great queen, a powerful queen, a leader of armies, right? A fashion trendsetter,
yeah,
admired by everyone for her erudition and her piety, right? She goes from being that to the disposed, the discarded wife, unable to provide a living son, not allowed to see her daughter anymore. And it's like her story and she probably dies of cancer, right? Her
yeah.
story makes me so sad. So then I look at that and people say, well, haven't you seen the Tudors? I'm like, no, why in God's name would I want to watch that show?
And like,
if,
and like,
even if the costumes were correct, why would I want to be sad and depressed and anxious by a show? No, thank you.
like I studied the Tudors, I acted all, but honestly, it's just. And Catherine, like I said, she goes from being the Infanta. She's important. She's her parents were king and queen of Castile and Aragon. She's this important princess. She's got important family members. She marries Henry, and they're in love for the first about 20 years of their marriage.
Yeah,
And then Henry grows tired. He casts her out, and then she dies. And like you said, she can't see her daughter. And of course, Mary the First, actually, when she's still a princess, when her mother was cast aside, she became more religious, partially in spite of her father, who was not very happy about that.
yeah,
And of
definitely.
course, yeah, I would admit that neither would admit that her mother's marriage hadn't been valid, neither would admit Mary was illegitimate, and because of that, they couldn't see each other. And
Yep.
it just breaks my heart that they never got to see each other before Catherine died.
Yep. It's a terrible story. Henry was an asshole. I
Yeah,
have always admired Mary and Catherine for their faith, for their determination to stick to their own chosen moral code. Honestly, I'm very pragmatic. I don't think I would have. I think I would have at least on the surface, I would have admitted those things just to be able to see my mother and or daughter, depending on the role I was playing.
yeah,
Um, but they didn't, and I admired them for that. But it meant that Catherine died miserable and alone, and Mary probably, suffered massive psychological trauma from that whole
yeah,
episode. So, when we talk about Mary and her, you know, was she a cruel queen? Was she not? Okay, but
yeah,
let's look at what Henry did to her.
yeah,
What she
exactly.
had to suffer through before she was finally queen. You should all be happy that she wasn't just a complete psycho like Ivan the Terrible,
Yes.
right?
Like she could have been so much worse than she was. Um, and people tend to argue that Elizabeth or Edward had a harder childhood. But one thing that I can be challenged on, but Mary knew her mother. Mary would have known her mother, had a bond with her mother, had a relationship with her mother. And then Edward and Elizabeth, they don't have this chance. They don't get to meet. They don't really get to know their mothers. So they don't really have everything they know is stuff people have told them. So Mary, in my opinion, arguably has it worse in that situation because she'll have known her mother, she'll have all a relationship with her mother, and then she can't see her. And it's
Yeah,
different when Elizabeth, her mother is executed when she's 2, I believe.
yeah,
But the thing
two
is,
or
she
three.
would.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so wait, we've got a couple of questions and comments here. Hold on a minute. Wasn't Middle Eastern medicine better than European medicine from the medieval times? Yes. Yes, absolutely. In the Middle East, in the European Middle Ages, the Middle East is going through a golden era, right? Right about the time that the Mongols come and burn the library at Baghdad, right? So the Middle East, North Africa, Iberian Peninsula, right? It's the golden era of Islam, and there's all sorts of scientists working on all kinds of research and development. Medicine is very advanced. In fact, it was acknowledged that Arab medicine was much more advanced, that Middle Eastern medicine was much more advanced than European because they actually copied medical manuals from Middle Eastern sources into various languages, Latin and other languages in Europe. That's Avicenna. Avicenna is actually an Arab doctor, right? So yes, absolutely, Middle Eastern medicine was more advanced than European. And honestly, most of the advanced aspects of medieval medicine in Europe were courtesy of the treatises that came from the Middle East. But a lot of those were also in turn founded on the works of Galen, right? So there was a continuity there, right? Okay, let's see. Stereotype of the guy sleeping in a pig pen and eating raw turnips. Yep, that's definitely a typical Middle Eastern or medieval stereotype. 100%. Yep. Did I watch Wolf Hall and the sequel? No, because I don't. It's not on any of my streaming services. So no, I haven't. I haven't seen Wolf Hall. I've seen the stills. The stills look pretty good. Yeah, of course, I can't tell how layered actually everything is, if it's all, but the stills, the silhouettes anyway, look really good. I,
yeah, I
I
myself,
haven't, yeah,
I have watched Wolf Hall though. Gonna be honest, when for me, I'm gonna again, I'm sorry, but when it comes to clothing aspects, I feel Wolf Hall does a pretty good job. Wolf Hall is pretty good. Um, I wish it was on streaming services though. Unfortunately, I had to pay YouTube to watch it, but it is pretty good.
yeah. There's nothing, and I mean literally nothing for which I would pay extra money. If it's not on my streaming services, I won't watch it. But that's just me. I don't care enough about seeing things to want to do that. But I'm not. This is not a judgment on anyone else, but that's why people keep mentioning these shows, and I'm like, no, I haven't seen it. Haven't seen it. I didn't even know about Wolf Hall actually as a show until last week. So
Yeah. I watched it 'cause people kept telling me my channel and my email, like, you should watch Wolf Hall, you should watch Wolf Hall. And I'm like, well, I'm not buying any more books that I'm probably not going to read, so I'm just going to watch the show. It's great.
Okay, so Tea with Tash actually has some good questions for us. How to start being a historical recreator, how to choose your era. She loves Baroque music, Regency fashion, learning Edwardian hand sewing, and she has a Portuguese Brazilian background. Right, so the first step, I don't know, for me, the first step was choosing an era whose clothing, an era and geography whose clothing I liked. Like for me, that was first step. And then from there, exploring the material culture and the history and the philosophy of that era. But I was saying this earlier, if you don't like the clothes of the era and culture, you should don't do that as your reenactment era. So that's my suggestion. What about you, Mason? Is that how you would recommend people go about picking an era for reenactment?
Definitely do that. But I find before you go for the clothing, to find a place that you look at the history, even just a little bit. And from there, after clothing, in my opinion, I think it's better when you research history first and figure out what one you like the most. Then from there, figure out, okay, which clothing, what do I find is the most interesting? Because you got to go for your own taste, right? That's why I'm wearing all this. I enjoy Tutor. That's just me though, so definitely go for what a place, like I said, place, a time, find what suits you. Yeah, that's basic. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing, Tosh, is that if you have to decide also, do I want to just do reenactment on my own private journey where I just make the clothes myself and I just do things myself? Or do you want to be part of a group, right? Do you want to be part of a club? So if you want to be part of a group, you have two options then. You can look up what groups are local-ish to you and see what eras are optional in your local area, or you can start your own. You can say, well, I want to do, say you like Baroque music. I want to do 1660s English because I really like Handel. Or I want to do 1690s English because I really like Handel. Okay, so, and you want to do it with people. So then you just put the word out. Now we have social media. It's so much easier now than it used to be. You can put the word out. I'm going to be starting to do 1690s reenactment. Would anyone like to join me? And then you can form your own little group that way. So you can either find a group that exists by, again, searching the internet, social media probably, or create your own. But yeah, I think it's very important that you pick an era whose material culture interests you, because if it doesn't, then what are you going to reenact? Right? Yes. Okay. So there are certainly plenty of men, mostly, who do only battle reenactments. And I don't mean that only men do battle reenactments. I mean, mostly it's men who only do battle reenactments. Women tend to want to do the whole thing. They'll do the battle stuff and they'll do the non-battle stuff. But there are plenty of men I know who only care about fighting. They only want to either poke people or stab people or hit people or pretend shoot guns at people. And that's all they do. So they don't care about the material culture of the relative era. They don't care about the real clothing. They just care about the armor and the uniforms, right? So that's the exception. If all you want to do is go and shoot people or poke people or stab people, then I guess it doesn't matter about the material culture because you can just do battlefield reenactment. So yeah, I guess, Tosh, it depends. Do you want to do living history? I consider what I do is more living history. I don't do reenactments generally ever because I don't care about the battles. I really don't give a shit about the battles. I only care about the battles insofar as they impact the rest of the culture and philosophy and history. Otherwise, battles are whatever. I'm happy for people to do them. I enjoy watching deeds of arms, but that's not really a battle. So, if you want to do battlefield reenactment, that's one thing. I prefer living history, which is where you recreate the culture and the material culture, the philosophy, engage in activities, maybe even try to interact in the manner in which people in that era interacted. That's living history. So I prefer living history to reenactment personally. What about you, Mason?
Yeah, I agree. I prefer with reenactments, like it's okay, but then you also have what you have to go off of. But if you're just doing living history, you can have a general idea, focus on what you want. And yeah, one of the battle things is mostly just men kind of being like, haha, bonk, bonk. Where's the fun in that? But yeah, definitely.
I mean,
And
I
I
can,
also say,
oh, go on. Sorry.
when you're getting to the culture, philosophy, all that, I also recommend personally, from my experience, try and get into food too. That may just be me,
Absolutely.
but
No, not just you.
yeah, especially food.
Definitely. I mean, I'm a foodie. Food in my family is a religion. So it's automatic. Like, I'm sorry, I forgot that. See, food is so automatically part of my life in all the eras that I forget that maybe you should mention that separately. You are correct. You should definitely explore the food of your chosen era and geography, because that will also give you a different understanding about how they live their lives, right? That will just, and frankly, I mean, Mason, I think you'll agree, historical foods are delicious.
They really are.
They really are.
Yeah.
I think that might be another myth that people have. When modern people think about the Middle Ages, they think about, oh, turkey legs, right? Like they imagine people covered in grease and food scraps, just scarfing food down, chewing on giant turkey legs like dogs, and then throwing the half-eaten bones onto the floor, right? That's not true. None of that is true. First off, turkeys are a New World animal. They don't come to Europe until the 16th century.
Yeah. I was actually just going to say that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and second off, table manners were so carefully regulated. We have books of etiquette that have survived from like the 13th century going forward that talk about how to appropriately conduct yourself at table. They talk about washing your hands and keeping your fingers clean and not sticking your spoon into the common bowl and not spitting and not grunting and not farting, right? So yes, obviously that means some people probably misbehaved at table, but you know what, Mason? I'm certain you've seen modern people behave in similarly disgusting manners at tables.
Yep. More disgusting. Much more.
Yeah, or
disgusting. More. Yeah. I mean, I'll take having to eat with a knife instead of a fork over whatever people do now. It's just no. And yeah,
Tosh says definitely don't give a flying thing about battles. Yeah, then focus on the clothes and the material culture. That's my recommendation. Yeah.
So next question. What construction techniques surprised you most about medieval clothing?
Yeah, so I would say that the one that has surprised me the most is a more recent, relatively speaking, discovery on my part, and a more recent discovery in the medieval tailoring world. Have you heard of the Schloss Langberg finds?
I myself.
Okay, so the Schloss Langberg is a castle in Austria. And back in the aughts, they were renovating rooms, and they were redoing the plaster. And they they removed the old plaster, and they found that the walls and the ceilings were stuffed with clothing. Hundreds, if not thousands, of fragments of textiles. And they started analyzing them. And what they found is they found actual pieces of garments from the 15th century that were large enough to identify as to what the garment was. And they actually found the bodices of several women's gowns that reflect the 15th century German look, that typical German look where you have the apple breasts and the dress over top of it, and it's got those folds in the front, the pleats, the organ pleats, right there, kind of in just this little area. Right. And when they analyzed, they looked at how that garment was actually cut. They actually found this very sophisticated bit of tailoring whereby they had taken basically a giant rectangle of fabric for the bodice, and they had cut out this strange little keyhole. And that keyhole actually then became the side seam of the gown. And so it took advantage of all of this bias stretch to create those organ pleats that you see that are right here in the front of these German style gowns. And it's such a sophisticated use of bias stretch that we had never seen in any extant medieval garment. It really, there's this great paper called A Lost Tailoring Revolution. If you look that up on academia.edu, you can find the paper with all the visuals. And the other thing that was interesting about this garment is that it was very clear they had utilized the properties of wool, i.e. that it can be molded with heat and steam, using hot irons, for instance, to help enhance the pleated effect of the bias cut just kind of falling in and falling into those natural folds. That was mind-boggling to me, because of course before that we know about geometric construction. We know that they developed the grand assiette sleeve, which is also pretty shocking actually, because we've lost the ability to make modern garments that allow you to do this, right? Like modern fitted garments, if your garment is fitted these days, you have no mobility in your arms. But the grand assiette sleeve actually gives you complete mobility in your arms and allows it to be beautifully skin tight and fitted. So this was, kind of the grand assiette sleeve plus this amazing bias cut technique to create those beautiful organ pleats in the front of the dress. Absolutely mind-blowing. And that it was so sophisticated, even in the 15th century, when everyone talks about, oh, well, tailoring isn't really invented until the 16th century, and it doesn't really reach its apogee until the 19th century. And it's like, oh, but is that true? I don't think so. Yeah, so those tailoring techniques are pretty impressive. The grand assiette sleeve is really, it's amazing we ever stopped wearing it, and I think it's just because the desired cut of the garment changed, but or the desired silhouette changed. But those beautiful rounded, smooth shoulders you see in all the late 14th or all the 14th century and early 15th century depictions of people, that's this amazing arm's eye that comes almost to the center of your chest and goes all the way down here and continues all the way almost to your shoulder blades. And by having that giant arm's eye, this giant sleeve cap, you can actually then have the sleeve, and with a couple of cleverly placed gores, you can then have the sleeve fit perfectly to your shape of your arm, to the shape of your torso and shoulder, and you still get 100% range of motion. So that's another amazing medieval creation, is the grand assiette sleeve, which basically by 1500 is gone. It's no longer, that style of tailoring is gone from Europe, except for maybe Ireland, possibly. So yeah, there's quite a few very, very sophisticated tailoring techniques from medieval Europe, and the snobbery of this idea that we are the best that we've ever been at anything is just, again, not true. Yeah.
When you're talking about how they were redoing the plaster and they found the garments, it reminds me, historic royal palaces had it up. They were doing renovations on I think it was an English palace somewhere, and they found really old graffiti in the walls, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh,
and that's
yeah.
what that reminded me.
That's pretty fun too. Just want to say hi, Jim. Welcome. It's nice to see you here on my channel. Thank you. So Jim, I'll take this note, and this is for both Mason and me. Our channels, everyone, every time YouTube does an update, it will redo your notification settings. So if you want to be notified of a creator, going live, for instance, then you need to go click on the notification bell and then make sure you click on all notifications. So Jim, you want to might want to make sure that all notifications is clicked on, because otherwise the almighty algorithm will do your thinking for you and will tell you what you should want to watch by only notifying you of certain limited things. So yeah, have you had that problem, Mason? A lot of my followers have been complaining lately that they haven't been getting the notifications.
YouTube, I'm sure you'll agree, Rachel, but YouTube needs to rework its algorithm. I want you to show me what I've told you I want to watch, not this junk you think I want to watch.
Yeah.
To watch this, I'd be searching this and I'd be watching it. Like, I'm out here watching documentaries, searching documentaries, having fun. And then it's just all these things that have nothing to do with me that it recommends. And then it's just like YouTube. And it's even worse then, of course. People who are subscribed then aren't going to be getting as much of my stuff because
Yep.
YouTube doesn't care about that anymore.
Yep. Yeah. So you really do. With the notification bell, you have to click on it and you have to click all. Otherwise, you may never see a notification about our respective channels going live. Yeah. Yeah. So welcome, Jim. Thank you for joining my community, by the way. Really appreciate that. Yeah. These have been really great questions, Mason. I really appreciate these. These are fun questions to answer. I mean, I could fall down the rabbit hole of medieval tailoring because it's just such a fascinating topic. It really is. Like, for instance, Diego di Cavanaglia, there's this 15th century condottiero, possibly one of the last real crusaders, if you will, who dies following a knee infection at the Battle of Otranto in 1481. And he's interred in his very beautiful garments in which he probably fought. And his farsetto, when they went to renovate his church because of some earthquake damage, they found his body, they found his clothes, and they restored his clothes. And what it showed us is some very clever tailoring for a garment, for his doublet, his farsetto, that was clearly meant to take the weight of leg harness, of what we would call armor modernly. And basically what it happens is, you've seen doublets in the Tudor era too. Doublets have a waist and they've got little skirts, like these little pepla, right? Well, on the Italian garments, that's a false seam in the front. So it's not a real seam. It's not a real seam. It's a false seam. It's just a line of stitching that has been put in to make it look like it's a seam and to give some definition to the waist area. But it's actually one panel going all the way down to just below the hip or at the hip, because leg harness would be suspended from the lacing holes. And so what that means is all this weight is being pulled on the front of the garment. And if you have a seam here, that seam's going to rip eventually because there's all that weight. But if it's a false seam, if it's just a line of stitching, then the weight of the harness is distributed throughout the whole fabric. And so you're not going to get a ripped doublet. So that was another fascinating thing to learn, is that it seems that probably the 15th century doublets don't have true skirts in the front. They only have true skirt seams in the back.
One thing, I wrote this question as I would really have to. What is your favorite historical headpiece?
Ooh, favorite historical headpiece. Yeah, I mean, I really do love, I do love a big tall headdress. So I really do love, in the West anyway, I absolutely adore what people incorrectly call a hennin. Wasn't called that in the period. But yeah, the tall, the elegant cone with a hood and draped with a veil, right? That's just such an iconic look. I just absolutely love it. It is so elegant. I mean, I'm a headdress person, so it is hard to play favorites, but I have to say, I think that's probably one of my favorites in the West. In the East, in Korea, I really love the jeonmo. The jeonmo is the frame hat that looks kind of like a salad bowl that's been turned upside down, and it's worn at a jaunty angle, and ladies would put a veil over top of it. I think that's really sharp too. But yeah, I would say the not a hennin. And the reason I call it the not a hennin is because it was never, ever called that in the Middle Ages. It wasn't called that until the Victorians got a hold of one single source from a preacher preaching in the 14 teens, long before that style of headdress even existed. And it's not even clear that it's the word for any headdress. It sounds more like it's an insult that he's imploring the boys to call at these women as he tells them to chase after these women and to pluck off their vainglorious headdresses. And he tells them to say, go after them and call out, oh, anna, to the hennin. But that word doesn't appear in literally any other source in French. So yeah, go on.
I have a very serious bone to pick with the Victorians. So much of the misinformation we have now is because of the Victorians and their stupid fantasies. Like, I love that you're enjoying your writing, But I hope you know that a couple hundred years from now, everyone's going to interpret, like people are going to interpret this as fact, and that's not going to be good. Especially, personally, I struggle because the Victorians have this obsession period where a lot of them are obsessed with the Tudor England.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and they go through their own whole like cosplay thing. Like people don't realize cosplay is not a new concept. I mean,
No.
medieval people cosplayed, the Romans cosplayed, but the Victorians were, like you said, they were obsessed with the English, especially the British. Were obsessed with cosplaying the Tudors. Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of this information. There's this persistent rumor I wish I could kill, is that so many people seem to be obsessed with the storyline that Edward VI and Lady Jane Grey were in a relationship. And it hurts my soul whenever I see someone say it. And I'll keep seeing people online who will say they know it's not true, but continue saying it anyway, just for the concept in like fiction and stuff. But there's this big thing. People don't seem to realize fiction exists when it comes to historical fiction.
Yeah, right.
Let me finish my book. And oh, people don't understand. They just really can't interpret that. And it pains me so much because so much of what people think is fact is just blatant fiction. And of course, then you say otherwise, despite the fact that you may have researched this for years and years and years. It's always had no, you're wrong. It's like, yeah, okay, just whatever. I give up.
Yeah, I mean, again, some of you may have seen, my most popular thing I've ever created for any social media platform is now a short I spun off during which I briefly rant about why I hate Hollywood movies, medieval Hollywood movies, right? And under that, I complain that they're dark, they're dirty, people are covered in mud, people are wearing rags. Women are wearing glamour makeup, and if they're not dirty and wearing rags, they're wearing evening gowns, right? And persistently beneath that, I have numerous people saying, but everyone was dirty in the Middle Ages and everyone did wear rags. Only the very richest of the rich could possibly afford to be clean. No, 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 no. That was the Victorian view of the Middle Ages that we have now inherited, sadly. Not true at all. So yeah, it's so frustrating. And then when I try to fight them on it, they won't listen. I'll say, look, there are manuals of health from the Middle Ages that talk about how important it is to clean yourself and your hands and your face. There are books of etiquette that talk about the way you should bathe yourself and wash on a daily basis. There's, so much evidence from the archaeological record of bathhouses that were everywhere in medieval Europe. We talk about the bathing customs. There are folk tales that involve bathing as part of the plot twists and the plot drivers or the background, right? So don't tell me that people didn't care about being dirty. They did. They absolutely did. Yeah, so frustrating.
One thing that was also fairly common, at least again, my specialty is England, so I'm not going to say anything else because, of course, that's not my specialty. But one of the first things you're going to do is most likely wash your face or your hands. And one thing that very much changes is how rich you are. Now, if you're rich, you're probably going to use rose water, orange flower water, but everyone's washing to some degree. Everyone, at least a little bit, is washing. And it drives me out. I agree that the idea that everyone is filthy is just no. Quite arguably, I see a lot more people. I see people on the street, not street, but like around, that look much dirtier than they would have been.
Yep,
like,
agreed.
Yep,
yeah. Agreed 100%. So there's a question here. Jim says, can I ask what the brooch that I'm wearing around my neck, is it in time correct? Yes. So this piece, this is actually a replica. It is exactly appropriate for this ensemble. This is a replica of a jewel that you can actually see depicted in portraits of Beatrice d'Este. Beatrice d'Este, as you would say in English, I guess. She was the Duchess of Milan, and she's one of the powerful Este ladies. very educated, very one of the quintessential Renaissance princesses, as it were. And this is a replica by Armor and Castings of that jewel, right? And you can see they did a beautiful job on the back too. So yeah, this is a replica of an original that we know existed. Unfortunately, the original did not survive through the modern day. It is highly likely that it was melted down and reset into a more fashionable setting later on, which is why we don't have many jewels that survive from the Middle Ages in their medieval form, because jewelry, like fashion, like clothing, is a fashion, and so tastes change. And actually, it's easier to recycle gems than it is to recycle fabric into another garment. So yeah, no, this is an accurate replica. This is by Armor and Castings, everyone. They are one of my channel sponsors. So if you decide you'd like such a piece, the prices are super reasonable. I know this looks like it should be hundreds of dollars. It's not. I think it was $50. So if you check out their channel, armorandcastings.com, use the code Contessa10, you'll get an extra 10% off of all of their purchases. So yeah.
Yeah. I want to add one thing, but before I do that, two attached in the chat said, my pet peeve is the idea that women didn't have purses because they could not deal with money.
What? Where did that idea? So that's the first I've heard that. That is, where have you heard that, Tosh? I believe that you've heard that. That's the first time I've heard that nonsense. Have you heard that before, Mason? No, yeah, okay. So, wow, that is utter nonsense. Yeah, oh my God, no. First off, women did wear purses. They had pouches that they suspended from their girdles, just like men did, by the way. They did have money, especially so they could give alms to the poor when they were out and about. And women often were trained in accounting management so that they could check up on what their stewards were doing so that they wouldn't be bamboozled. So none of that is true.
Well, and the same person said another thing in chat I want to address. Read a book on Regency England, and it said bad because someone said on their diary that they went into Parliament and smelled bad. Everyone smelled, they wouldn't note it. It would be normal. Yeah. One big part of Parliament smelling in England was the Thames. The Thames was a mess. And
it was pretty gross.
Parliament smelled mostly because the Thames are right next to Parliament. So that's all wafting in. And during the Victorian era, what does Parliament do when it becomes a problem? They put, what is it called? I think it's called lime wash or lime something. It's basically like a scented kind of bleach thing. They would put it on the curtains so the smell wouldn't come in. That was their solution. Fix the problem? No. Make sure they don't have to smell it? Yes.
Yeah, see, this is another part where people misconstrue Victorian or Georgian London or England or wherever with the medieval version. And they just assume that, oh, well, if it was this bad in the great, wonderfully advanced 18th and 19th century, then back in the benighted Middle Ages, it must have been worse. No, no, no. It mustn't have been. The Industrial Revolution made things so disgusting and dirty. It crowded people into spaces like never before in the history of humanity, in the history of the world. And it brought with it chemical pollution, air pollution, all of the waste from too many people living in too small of a place. The actual extreme poverty that people ascribe to the Middle Ages isn't medieval, it's Industrial Revolution era, it's post-Reformation.
And the Industrial Revolution itself also, this is again very off topic, but it also affects people as a whole, because as before the Industrial Revolution, of course, there's the practice of 2 sleeps, which I love and I've tried, and it's very nice.
Yeah, biphasic sleeping. Yes, yes.
Going to sleep once and waking up around the middle of the night, doing something for a bit, and then going back to sleep. I've done it. I love it. And that changed, of course. More people are working jobs. More people get up early, so they're not doing that anymore. They are doing 1 sleep. And of course, for most of history, especially in Europe, 2 sleeps. That's what you're doing. That's the thing.
Yeah. So biphasic sleeping, for those who are unfamiliar with the practice. So before factories broke our clocks and enforced on us a completely unnatural sleeping system, people naturally would go to sleep whenever it got dark. So different seasons, that would be different times of day. Generally, they would go to sleep when it got dark for a number of reasons, but one, because we're programmed to sleep when it's dark. And then sometime in the middle of the night, people would just naturally wake up after the first sleep, usually after about 3 to 4 hours. And people would actually get up and do things, not necessarily lots, because, before electricity, your lighting is going to be limited and lighting is expensive. But they would talk, they might have a snack. They might, if there's something you can do that doesn't require lots of light to see, they would get that accomplished. And then they would go back to sleep for the second sleep. And so for those of you who suffer from insomnia because you wake up at 2 a.m. and you're like, God, I'm awake. Yes, you're supposed to be. Get up, do something, then go back to sleep for another couple of hours. Unfortunately, the modern world makes it so that we almost can't do that anymore because we have a job that wants us to be there at 8 a.m., right? So, yeah. Industrialization has been a mixed blessing.
Yeah. Bifacial sleeping, that's something, I do that a lot in the summertime because, of course, the joys of being in middle school is you got to get up early.
Right.
But yeah, whenever I'm on break, that's what I do. Because it's more feels right. It just feels right. To be fair, it is. Yeah. That's how we were programmed for hundreds and thousands of years. And then, the Industrial Revolution comes along and it's like, no more of that. No.
That's right. We need you to work a 11 or 12-hour shift. So yeah, none of that nonsense. Yeah. Noise pollution. Yeah, that's another problem in the modern world, of course, is noise pollution. In fact, I think, honestly, if a modern person went back to the Middle Ages, I think the thing that might strike them the most is the silence, relatively speaking, because I think we underestimate how much noise pollution from the electrical grid, from aircraft, from the street noise, from electronic devices everywhere, right? Just the cumulative susurration of all of this is actually cacophonous. And so I think the first thing people would notice is that, especially at a certain register of hearing, it would be quiet. It would be, and I think some people might actually be scared by that silence, modern people. It would be alarming to them.
Yeah.
Let me see. Question, was this common everywhere and always or only in Europe? T with Tosh, are you talking about biphasic sleeping? In which case, it's how humans are programmed. Now, how other civilizations may or may not have allowed it, I can't speak to so much. I'd be interested to actually do further studies on other civilizations to see how they may have enabled biphasic sleeping or disabled it over time. Have you heard about other civilizations, Mason? Other polities, other cultures?
Not that I can think of at this moment, but I know.
Now I'm curious.
All I can say is that it was done in Europe. I don't know about any other cultures and their practices around it, but
yeah, what I've read on biphasic sleeping is that whether or not cultures have allowed it, it is the natural human thing to do, actually. So it's not even that it was enforced in medieval Europe. They literally just did what humans are supposed to do. So, yeah. Good question, though. Now I need to go look that up. Okay, T with Tosh, I'm going to try and have the answer by my next medieval sewing party for you. Oh, goodness. What a fun conversation.
This is very fun. I'm looking at some of the questions, and I'm realizing we are genuinely having a nice conversation, and we have answered most of these already.
Yeah, that does happen. I'm sorry. I tend to wander off on tangents as things trigger other thoughts.
Well, honestly, I much rather that. It's much more natural. It's much more fun to talk with stuff.
Agreed.
Normally.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I mean, ironically, it's called Courtly Conversations, so...
It should be a chat, 100%. Yeah. Let me see. Jim says, I only get about 2 hours of solid sleep, and then it's broken sleep after that and I'm up until about 5, or I'm up at about 5 or 5:30 every morning. Yeah, so Jim, it sounds like your body is trying to force you into biphasic sleep and you're ignoring it, which isn't your fault. Like, that's what we all do. All of us do that. We're like, it's 2 a.m. I need to go back to sleep. I need to go back to sleep. And then we spend the next, 3-4 hours fighting it until it's finally time to get up. Yeah. Let me see. Tea with Tosh says, I'm going to ask my mom, but I'm pretty certain that in the 70s, she went to the Brazilian outback and they did biphasic sleep. I bet they did. Honestly, this is all hypothesis, or maybe supposition at this point, not even hypothesis, supposition. I'm going to assume or suppose that probably most civilizations where time allows you to do the natural thing probably had a biphasic pattern of sleeping. I'm going to assume. Yeah. See, make sure I didn't miss any good comments. Okay, yeah. So Mason, what is your idea of the ideal living history event?
That's a good question. Well, for me personally, it would definitely be something where, my ideal living history event, definitely something where it's about trying to be as accurate as we can be. That's one thing about me. I love accuracy as much. I love accuracy. So definitely costume-wise, yes, and history-wise, just everything. Now, one thing, of course, I find I can't do things where you're just generic people from that time, which happens a lot now. I just can't do that. That's part of the reason I do Henry VIII, because I need someone whose life I can go off of, someone who's a specific person I can research, talk about, and all that. So definitely something where everyone's actually someone who would have been around or important. Definitely. Not very prepared for this question, but
no,
yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, definitely something where accuracy is much more sought after and appreciated than it tends to be.
Right. That is a problem.
Yeah. Like, wear what you want to wear, but it just drives me. The amount of historical, like we talked about at the beginning, about a while ago now, I just can't stand it when there is an inaccuracy that's so blatantly an inaccuracy that you just can't ignore it. Some things are tiny, and that's but if it's something like super major, which happens more than I like to admit, I couldn't. I really couldn't. And that's part of the reason I like doing social media in costume, because it's my own little world, and I kind of do what I want with it, kind of mold it and shape it, and it's much.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, I can totally understand what you're saying. For me, the ideal event would certainly it would probably be in a restricted period. For my ideal event, I actually have no problem with multi-period events, and I'll talk about my coping mechanisms for that, and maybe that might help you with some of the things that challenge you at more generic events, right? But my ideal event would be a focused period event. I focus on the 15th century now because that's the earliest period for which we have documentable dance. And that is literally why I chose the 15th century, because I started interested in the 12th century because of the gorgeous France, because of the gorgeous clothes. But then I realized we know nothing, zero, about dance in that era. And I was like, oh, but I want to dance. I want an authentic dance experience. Well, the only way I'm going to get an authentic dance experience is by moving to the earliest era when we have dance manuals, and that's the 15th century. So that's what drove me forward to the 15th century. So that's probably why it would be a 15th century event, because again, anything about dance before that is so conjectural as to be undocumented and unreliably documented, right? So, yeah, it would be the ideal event is a courtly event. It will have lots of courtly activities. There'll be dancing, and there'll be amazing, gorgeous food, and there'll be music, and there'll be poetry recitation, and people will tell stories that are actual either told in the style of or actual just recountings of, say, Boccaccio's Decameron or Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. People will be interacting in a manner that is appropriate to that courtly life. So for me, honestly, the way in which people behave, the interactions are almost as important as the visual, because I'm a linguist. So for me, how people talk matters. So if people are walking around in perfect 15th century kit, but they're saying things like, hey, bruh, what you up to? Like, okay, completely ruined. I no longer want to be at this event. So manner of speech and the way in which we talk and engage is almost as important for me as the physical manifestations of the culture of the era. And I realized that for some people that doesn't matter, they're just completely visual. And for other people, the visual doesn't matter, it's only the interactions. But I'm one of those rare, on the far right side of the bell curve birds who likes, I want the whole thing. I want the visuals to be beautiful and accurate. And I want the interactions to be more medieval-esque than modern, right? And that can be challenging for people. But one of the nice things about dance is that dance provides an automatic framework for people to interact in a medieval manner, because we know how people invited each other to dance. We know how they danced together. We know what they did at the end of the dance, right? So we actually have a documentable set of rules for behaving in that specific context. So that's one of the reasons I think for my very first medieval event, I wanted there to be dance, because I knew in some core level that would be an automatically immersive experience without much effort, you know? So I think that would be and one of the things I love a good medieval, you know, if you're doing good medieval courtiers, you should have lovely turkey rugs, as they call them in the Decameron, what we call Persian rugs, laid out on the grass. And you have a bunch of courtiers just reclining on them. There's a musician playing the lute, and occasionally people get up and dance. And, you know, it's just this absolutely courtly idyll, right? Like I want beauty at my events. That's what I want. Now, I do also deeply enjoy experimental archaeology. So I do also like the getting dirty side of things too. I like cooking over fire with medieval implements. I like fermenting urine so that I can then do laundry the medieval way. So I guess that's kind of at odds with that. You just said you like all the beautiful parts. Well, I do like some of the stinky, dirty parts too, but they're part of a different experience, right? Like either I'm going to do courtly or I'm going to do peasant or, you know, labor, right? I can't combine those two in my head, because you know, a 15th century noblewoman would not have collected urine to ferment it and then do laundry. So I have to, in my own mind, I have to put a wall up and separate those two aspects of myself.
But on the topic of dance, I would like to say this is completely unrelated to the conversation, but actually the first video, I'm pretty sure it was yours because I'm pretty sure it's the first video I watched by you. It was about how to do. It was a dance. I don't remember what it was called.
Describe it.
I wouldn't remember now. This was a few months ago, because I remember because I was working on my tutor dance, and it was I think the washerwoman's something.
Washerwoman's brawl. Yeah. Yep.
It might.
I do indeed have a video on that. Yep.
Because I was looking at all the different styles of tutor dance, because I wanted to learn one, because I'm doing this, and of course dancing was a big part. And that was, I think, the easiest one I saw, because a lot of them were just, you know. But yeah, bit unrelated, but that was actually the first video of yours that I saw.
Yeah, washerwoman's brawl is interesting. So brawl, the word brawl actually comes from the French brûler, to sway, which means to sway in French. And these were basically dances that move sideways, so either in a line or in a circle. And they're actually mid 16th century French. but they come to England. We know because they're mentioned by name and there are books of music from England that contain them. We don't actually know which brawls were danced in England per se, but we know they were danced. So yeah, it's a reasonable assumption that the dances that are described in the French sources could have been done in Tudor England. And the washerwoman's brawl is fun because you're imitating washerwomen. Both the men and the women, you're imitating washerwomen. So it has all of these miming gestures built into it that should imitate part of the laundry process and also part of the scolding process. So that's, yeah, it's a fun dance. It's a good one. It's a simple one. Did I say fermenting urine? Yes, I did. Mason, have you done much work with fermented urine for any particular aspect of living history?
Research-wise, yes. Physically, no, and I think I'm very happy for that. But yeah, bleaching, ammonia would be from
yes,
bleach.
Exactly. When you ferment ammonia or when you ferment urine, it breaks down into ammonia. And it's the ammonia that we really want because ammonia is a natural degreaser, a very good degreaser, by the way. Ammonia is a natural bleach. It's a very good bleach. It's very good at removing stains. It's also used in tanning and dyeing for a variety of purposes. It's used in wool production, specifically for degreasing. So yeah, if you want to do laundry the medieval way, you need to have a vat of fermented urine at hand and combine the fermented urine with all that ammonia combined with the effects of the sun, and you will actually be able to bleach your garments back to white pretty well, just as effectively as with modern bleach. But unlike modern bleach, the ammonia will not destroy your fibers and it won't cause fiber rot. So it's better than modern bleach, in fact. Let me see. The washerwoman's brawl is so connected in my head with TikTok dances. The idea of knowing the dance and imitating and miming. Yep. And actually, you know, Tosh, I made that video before TikTok, or actually, I guess before I really thought about TikTok as a thing. I should run that video through my editor and make it spin off some clips that I can post on TikTok. Because yeah, it's totally a TikTokable dance, 100%. Yep. And my condottiero says, yep, fermented urine comes up in our conversations way too often. They do. Fermented urine is a part of my daily medieval life. Let me see. Gelbaline or Gelbalinia says that there isn't much opportunity to dance with others now. Yeah, in the modern world, definitely. And that's one of the things I love about these living history events is that if you're doing it right, dance should be a natural part of the event, because before the now, people danced socially in the West, everyone, men and women. This thing about real men not dancing is modern macho bullshit. So yeah, everyone danced in the Middle Ages. Knights especially danced in the Middle Ages. So none of this, oh, I'm a warrior, I do not dance. You're a warrior, you do dance. In fact, we actually know that, for instance, Landsknecht, some of the manliest macho men of the 16th century, right? Supposedly, the Landsknecht, who sometimes had their wives or their girlfriends with them, but sometimes didn't. We know that when they were waiting for the campaign to start the next day, the night before, they would actually just do line dancing around the fire. No women, just them dancing to amuse themselves. Some of the manliest men of the 16th century, right? At least by our imaginings. And they danced without women just to amuse themselves, because dancing is in and of itself fun, whether or not you're doing it with someone you would like to court, right? Dance was not just about courtship in the pre-modern world. Dance was just fun. So Jim O'Neill says, does it weaken the fabric like bleach? Yeah. So to recap, I know there's a little delay in the chat, so probably you heard me say this already, but yeah, ammonia does not weaken the fabric the way Clorox does or chlorine-based bleach does, which is another of the perks of bleach. But as far as I understand, I think I've been given to understand that chlorine bleach is easier to produce than ammonia-based bleach, but don't hold me to that. I'm not a chemist, so.
One thing I would like to talk about, I don't know if you'd like to, but the scent, specifically more scented things people would use in the Middle Ages and Renaissance, like rose waters and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great topic because this will also help us counter that narrative of the stinky Middle Ages, right? We can dig into that a little bit more. Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
And floral smells specifically were so important. And nowadays, yes, it's associated more so with femininity. But everyone, if you're rich, you're gonna want to be smelling like flowers.
Yep.
Rose water, orange flower water. You're gonna want to smell good. Citrus also very large. So a lot of smells that we think of today that we like, they were a lot of things that they would have used then. And when it comes to washing your face and washing your hands, if you had a bit of money, you would absolutely be using rose water for that. You would be dipping your hands and washing your face, that because you want to smell nice.
Yeah. And there were two kinds of rose water that were available. So there was the expensive rose water, and that was the water that was actually made from distilled rose petals, right? So that was basically where you took the essential oil of rose and then you added water to it. That's what people think of as rose water now. But I actually found a cheater recipe in, I think, the Ménagier du Paris for rose water, where he literally just makes a steeping. He steeps the rose petals just straight up in the water and just makes a decoction of the rose petals rather than the expensive and very technically challenging process of distillation. So, even people with less money, I'm not talking about the beggars on the street, but even people on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, when roses were in season, could have nice smelling rose water too. Not as powerful or as potent as the rose water made with the hydrosol of rose, but still, it would have smelled nice.
I love, though, when you go throughout history altogether and notice how things change and our concepts of, one thing I love to look at specifically is the change in the concepts of masculinity and femininity, and how a lot of things today we associate with one thing are completely different throughout most of history. And I just find it
Very
so
true.
much to look at, see how society changes, how time changes, how it changes. Like, especially colors and scents. I mean, there was a time, doesn't matter what you were, you wanted to smell floral because it smelled nice. You wanted to smell like citrus. You wanted to smell good.
Well, and not just floral. So, are you familiar with Cosmetica Obscura? Okay, so Cosmetica Obscura, they're two ladies, they're two Laurels in the SCA for anyone for whom that means anything, and they research and recreate cosmetics from actual medieval and Renaissance recipes, and they actually have. You can go to their website. You can actually buy recreated scents, skin creams, hair oils, etc. And they've based them on these original recipes. They've excluded toxic things where those recipes included toxic things. But one of the things you find in a lot of the recipes from the 12th all the way up to the 16th century, it's not just floral smells, it's spices. And so there's a lot of spices that are used that we would never think of as something you should smell like, because you shouldn't smell like a spice cookie. But medieval people, if they smelled nice, probably smelled like spice cookies. They smelled like cloves, they smelled like cinnamon, they smelled like cubebs, right? These were all spices that were used in these oils, in hair powders. So, you'd have not just like you said, the orange blossom oil and the rose, which both would have been very expensive. You'd also have spices, which were also very expensive, more expensive possibly than rose, actually. So, you've got these spicy, florally smells. Yeah, you would smell like a spice cookie, basically. So hopefully that's pleasant. Hopefully that's a pleasant smell. But I have several of their reproduction skin creams. I've got two 12th century ones, and I've got a 15th century one, and I have one of their 16th century hair oils. And the exotic way that this smells, but it's so refreshing, and it smells addictive. I open the bottles and I just snort them. Like, I just enjoy filling my nostrils and my sinus cavities with that smell, but it is so different from what we think of as modern perfumes. and honestly, so much more pleasant, because to me, modern perfumes have that acrid chemical bite that give me a headache.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh, Jennifer, thank you for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. And there was a question. Yes, Mason has a channel, King Henry's Royal Court. King Henry's Royal Court, or the Royal Court of King Henry. Did I get it right? No, King Henry's Royal Court, right? Yeah. Definitely check out their channel and subscribe. And remember, click the notification bell with everyone. Jim says they smelled like dessert, huh? Yeah, I mean, if the shoe fits, go for it. It's a different kind of aesthetic. But I think we have to remember that in this era, rose oil, orange blossom water, or rose water, orange blossom water, and spices were crazy expensive. And so to be able to smell that way would be a sign of wealth. Now, we do know that if they couldn't afford spices, they could afford herbs, right? Whatever grew locally. So even just some lavender blossoms ground up, some sage leaves and sorrel and these other green leaves ground up and sprinkled and combed through your hair, or worked into an oil and then rubbed on your skin, even that would still smell nice. So again, it's not just the poor who have access to these, or it's not just the rich, the ultra rich even, who could have access to things to make them smell nice. There are ways to smell nice all across the socioeconomic spectrum. Oh, I'm bleeding. Oh dear. Before I bleed all over this dress, I guess I got so excited that I poked myself with the needle and I didn't even notice. Now there's blood everywhere.
That's one thing I don't like about sewing. Bring myself the needle. I made this hood. The amount of times that needle almost went through my finger.
Yeah. I'm so numb to being poked by pins and needles that I don't even notice it anymore. Yeah. Okay, so let's see other questions or comments. Susan says she has some of Cosmetica Obscura's items. She has their Aleppo soap, which I also have and use for my hair shampoo. And their moisturizers are absolutely scented, and their perfume is really nice too. They have a perfume that's based on a 16th century Italian recipe, where the recipe is labeled "scent to take away the cares of the soul." Yeah. More comments. Yeah, okay. We got through all the comments. Did they use amber rock back then? Is amber rock a brand name, or do you mean did they use amber like this gemstone or the precious stone? The hardened sap from pine trees. Is that what you mean, or do you mean something else? Question: if you went back to your favorite period, what would you miss the most? And what would you take with you? Oh God, I would take a hazmat suit. Level 4, biocontainment. That's what I would take. Oh goodness. I mean, what about you? So what about you, Vason?
Well, I'm not sure what I would take there, but take back with me. Considering I'm going to the 1540s, I would hope I will be taking back my head. Attached to my preferably, but to take with me, that's a good question.
Yeah, I would, so if we're assuming that there's some kind of magical spell that protects my person from the microbes of that era, then okay, going with that assumption, I would definitely want to go back to the court of Margaret of York in the Duchy of Burgundy to see what that was like firsthand. And I would also really like to go back to the Florence of the 1460s through 1480s and really see with my own eyes what Florence looked like and smell what it smelled like and see how people actually looked in real life in those times. I mean, it's hard to, honestly, I can't all of these, the court of Margaret of York, I would want because there's so many question marks around her because the archives that had all of her records, the records of her duchessness, her duchesship, her duchy, they were set on fire by French revolutionaries in the 1790s. Yeah, good stuff, right? Fuck the French Revolution. I say that. I say that so often when it comes to the study of medieval French history and culture, and in this case, Burgundian culture. So yeah, I would like to go back to her court and meet her and see what she was actually like. And I would like to go back to Sejong the Great's court in Korea in the 15th century for similar reasons, because he was this erudite Renaissance king of Korea. He's the only king who has the moniker the Great. And it's not because he did terrible things. He did wonderful things. And he gave civil servants, men and women, paid paternity and maternity leave. He gave women rights. He instituted all sorts of social justice reforms. He was a scholar, he was a scientist, he was an inventor. He created an alphabet that everyone could read and write in instead of just the upper 0.1% of the population. So I would love to go back to his court and experience that firsthand, because with a king like that, it must have been wonderful. So yeah, that would probably, and what would I take with me? Taking back there would probably, if I have the spell that I don't need the bio hazmat suit level for, then I would probably take sunblock. and toothpaste. I would take sunblock, toothpaste, and toothpaste. That's what I would take with me. Yeah.
But as someone who also enjoys just the general study of history, I second the comments on the French Revolution, because they were so radical with it that I think they kind of lost sight of what they were trying to do.
Yep.
Because eventually it just kind of became the new government being like, and you're going to be executed, and you're going to be executed, and guess what? So are you. We're handing them out like candy today, folks. The reference to the Reign of Terror. But
yeah. I mean, Robespierre. It's just like, wow, that was poetic justice. Yeah, but it's also in the study of history, the damage they did, all of the art they purposefully destroyed, the archives that they burned, not just the ones in Dijon, which are the ones I'm referencing. They just destroyed so much willfully just because they tied it to the crown and therefore automatically labeled it as evil. Okay, well, thank you for that.
I once got into an argument with someone in the YouTube comment section, because I am a believer that although she was a contributor, Marie Antoinette was more propagandized and a scapegoat than as much of the problem as she was. Of course, France had been bankrupt for a long time. We've been off topic here, but I need to get this out. France had been bankrupt for a while now. We can blame Louis XIV for that, but Marie was so propagandized. And this person, I was saying that like she was really not much different from any other monarch. Because I will defend her at that point till the day I die. And they responded saying that that was a lie, and that Robespierre had actually been amazing, and that he was propagandized and didn't deserve his fate. And I was over here just...
Yeah, I mean, so the reality is that the French crown for centuries, France had the wrong approach to things like taxation, because they were taxing the commoners, but not their aristocrats, right? So from the word go, Marie Antoinette was set up for a big fail, because that's unfortunately that there was that it was going to end badly for her, but that wasn't her policy.
And France and Austria were already on bad terms, and that's part of the thing. Xenophobia, fair foreigners, that was a big part in why they were kind of like, maybe she is evil. And of course, a lot of the fake charges, that's why I don't like when people mention it around me, because I could go on for hours about how realistically Marie was more of a scapegoat Even though she did contribute, she was not one of the main factors. We can blame Louis XIV and his need to be lavish for that. And then, of course, like you said, the belief that keeping everybody else poor and being like, haha, screw you, go bye. Um, that was part of the thing. Louis XVI, that was a big one of his things. He was raised by people and had advisors who were like, just kind of keep them poor. What does it matter to us? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Uh, let's see. It's a perfume stone. Oh, okay. Ambergris. Are you talking about ambergris? I actually am not certain about. So talking about the smells, ambergris. I'm trying to think if I have seen ambergris mentioned in any of the recipes that I've seen. Now, this is not my area of expertise. I don't recall seeing ambergris, but that doesn't mean it isn't used in one of those recipes. We have literally hundreds of recipes that have survived from the Middle Ages for concoctions for making your hair clean, your skin clean, your hair smell nice, your skin smell nice. So I just because I haven't seen ambergris doesn't mean it's not there. Let me see. Toothpaste. So true. Yeah. Yeah. So do you know what, Mason, do you know what the medieval and Tudor equivalent of toothpaste was? Oh, this is so scary.
There's a few different ones, but
yeah, they're all terrible.
Yeah. I know for the rich, sugar was commonly used, but also
in the Tudors, yeah.
It was a common thing. You just get a cloth, put it on your finger, and rub your teeth.
Yeah.
That happened, and then I think some of the first toothpaste was the 18th century, and had stuff like gunpowder in it. I'm not one for putting gunpowder on my teeth. I don't think that's going to work out very well. Which we know.
So they actually. So before they were using sugar, God bless the Tudors, because sugar, of course, that's the 16th century is when sugar starts booming, right? Before that, they were using ground up abrasive powders. That was their toothpaste. So they were using ground up calcium, ground up shells, and other gritty things that would literally polish their teeth. And while that certainly made the stains go away, it also removed the enamel. So, yeah, for certain, if I were to travel back in time to any pre-20th century era, I would want my fluoride toothpaste. That's what I would want. A lot of it, lots of it, plenty of it. 100%. Although, if you eat a diet the way our pre-agricultural ancestors ate, you don't actually need toothpaste because then you don't actually get things that rot your teeth. But unfortunately, things like bread, breed the kind of microbiota in our mouths that cause cavities. So, and sugar does it even worse. So that's why, Elizabeth, our woman Elizabeth I had black teeth by the time she was at the end of her life cycle.
Yeah.
Gross. But let me see. In the Middle East, miswak was used. Not too bad, I think. Miswak. So what is? I've never heard of miswak. What is miswak? That is a new word for me. And was that used to make you smell nice or to clean your teeth? That would be very interesting to know.
I'm looking up. It's according to this. It's a natural teeth cleaning. It's a twig, basically.
Oh. They did.
Regions.
They did also in parts of medieval Europe. They did also use some people in places. They did take a twig and splinter the ends and use that to clean their teeth too. Yeah, that apparently is not too bad in terms of enamel destruction. It depends on how hard you push. Just like with a modern brush, where you can also damage your enamel. Probably using a stick would depend on whether you overbrush or not. Yeah.
But one thing that I really enjoy is I think historical food is severely underappreciated. We need more love for historical food. I don't care if you think it's gross. I don't think I would ever touch conger eel, but I mean, come on now. And then you guys have March.
So I've actually
Oh,
had conger eel, and it's actually pretty good. I had it on a flight because I flew business class on All Nippon Airways, and the meal included conger eel as one of the like 50 little things that was in this beautiful bento style box, and it was actually pretty good. Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't think I
one
would like it.
no, it looks they look very very ugly.
Well, no, okay, but once they're cooked, it's fine. So you have to maybe have someone else prepare it for you, and then it just comes
Yeah,
out like a nice slice of meat on a platter, and then it's
yeah,
okay.
and just don't tell me what it is until I've a while later, and maybe I'll be
E-
good. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, but one thing I loved to watch, and I watched it. I'm the kind of person who I'll watch something and I like it, and it just becomes something I'll watch when I want to watch something, but don't know what to watch. Um, uh, like one thing I love, I've rewatched all the same documentaries. That is a bad habit of mine. Not bad
Oh
habit,
no,
just a
I
habit
do
of mine.
too. No.
But
I do
yeah,
too. You know why? Because I notice different things on rewatching.
yeah,
Right.
and sometimes
100%.
watching new ones. Yeah, sometimes you watch new ones, and it's like, oh my god, no, no. And what was I gonna say? What was I gonna say?
Food. We're talking about food, medieval
Yes,
food, historical food.
yes. Talking about conjure eel and that
Yes.
part. Do you remember the last thing I said?
Was I don't think I would try conjuro. You were talking about how people how historical food is something that's underappreciated,
Yeah,
and probably you were going to segue into how that should be a thing that we explore more in living history, maybe.
yeah. But there's a lot of historical food that, honestly, I just one thing I would love to try is marzipan because it's basically just an early version of marzipan, and I mean
It is marzipan. Yep.
it's just
Yep.
like an early predecessor, and like
Have you made any of the 14th or 15th century recipes or 16th century
I've
recipes?
made I've made pottage. So pretty much just soup, but it's a bit different because you have chunkier things in it. But yeah, uh, pottage. You can have all kinds of things in pottage. You can have parsnip, all kinds of meats. You can have
Yep.
carrot, potato. Well, probably not potato because that's still new, but
No. Yep.
um, like
Well, so
carrot.
so for those who don't know, pottage is just a stew, and it
Yeah,
is literally whatever is in season in the moment. It is the
yeah,
stone soup of the Middle Ages. So even though peasants, for instance, probably ate a primary diet of pottage, what was in the pottage would change from week to week, if not from day to day. So it
and
wasn't the
almost
same thing over and over and over again.
and almost everyone ate some form of pottage. It was a
Yeah,
staple in Tudor England, at least as far as I'm aware. Again, I'm not making claims for other countries if I don't study them. My area of expertise is 16th century England. Um, but all kinds of food. One thing I love to watch over and over again, like I was talking documentaries. History Hit posts a lot of good stuff on their
they
YouTube
do.
channel.
They do. I agree.
And Dan Snow, and he's trying a bunch of Tudor foods. I love it so much. Just rewatched it and I rewatched it and I rewatched it. And yeah, that's yeah.
So for those who like medieval cuisine, I actually have started a medieval cooking party on my channel. So I already have a couple of episodes up where we explore the original recipe and using my combination of modern kitchen and some medieval-ish tools, we actually recreate it. So I love medieval cooking, and I've been doing it for 30 years, and it is remarkable what kind of bright, complex, interesting flavors that you can create using medieval ingredients, even if you exclude the expensive spices. Just
Yeah.
the way they used vinegar um, and verjuice and wine and different kinds of fat and the different parts of the animal, right? It's such an interesting cuisine. You were talking about how the Victorians have damaged living history so much, or medieval history. So I have a fantastic book, and if my condottiere were here, I'd have him go fetch it from the bookshelf. We actually have a vintage book, late Victorian book on medieval cuisine, and it is so fantastically snarky. it is very clear that the Victorians thought very ill of medieval material culture and especially medieval cuisine, because this snobby British author, you can hear his Queen's English as you're reading along, his very nasally accent. And he basically says medieval food is nothing but a series of tasteless, formless mushes that wouldn't be suitable for the poorhouse these days. And it's like, whoa, dude, you're literally writing a whole book about medieval cuisine and this is your view of it? Maybe you shouldn't be writing this book. Maybe this isn't the topic for you.
The Victorians were obsessed with the idea that they were the most advanced culture, and that
they really were.
That was their obsession. And it's like, you really weren't.
Good try. Thank you for playing, but you're not.
You're telling yourself that. You really can, but no.
Yeah, this book is pretty funny. It's just from that perspective. But what's interesting about this book, what's positive, is that he references a bunch of other sources that aren't in print anymore. So it's good, useful from that perspective for the study of medieval cuisine. But I was, some of these recipes are so insanely sophisticated. Have you heard of torta parmigiana? Okay, so the torta parmigiana is a 15th century masterpiece of Italian cuisine. It is a giant pie that consists of 4 different kinds of ravioli, each one of them dyed a different color with different fillings, including lamb and ricotta and pork and another cheese. Then on top of that, you've got rabbit and chicken layered in there. You've got cheese and eggs. And then you're supposed to cut some pastry out, roll some pastry out, cut it into shapes, dye it, cut it into shapes, and then layer that in there. And then there's tons of butter put in there too. And you put that all in one giant coffin, pie crust, and cover it and bake it all together. And of course, you also have to then, after it's baked for a little bit, glaze it in a saffron colored egg yolk wash so that it turns this beautiful yellow. So all of that, it's got sausage too. It has homemade sausage. So you're also supposed to make sausage to go in this pie. And it's all of those things together. So 4 kinds of ravioli, 3 kinds of sausage, rabbit and chicken, and eggs and cheese and butter. All put in there together and then baked into one pie. One pie is supposed to serve 25 people. One iteration of the recipe is for 25 people. So goodness gracious. Okay, T, thank you for joining us today. Tosh, really, it was great to see you again. I look forward to seeing you at one of my later, many upcoming live streams. We have so many live streams scheduled. It's crazy. Yeah. So torta parmigiana, I have a cook who's been looking into it and has been starting to practice the various components. And at this immersive 15th century event I run called the Decameron, she plans on making this thing next year, next October. We should finally be able to taste the torta parmigiana, because it's a cast of hundreds kind of recipe, because you need a sausage maker, you need a ravioli maker, you need someone who can handle roasting the chickens and the rabbits. And you need a pastry maker, someone to make both the pastry shells and the pastry for the ravioli, right? So it's going to be quite an undertaking. I'm very excited for this this pie, as it were.
Susan in chat said, Marie Antoinette needed a cause like soup kitchens. It took her ages to get pregnant. Looking at you, Louis XVI. One thing about that. So about 7 years into their marriage, her brother, Marie's brother, visits the couple, right? And we know that he talked to Louis about how he should go about it. And then he wrote a very embarrassing letter to them both about what to do. And it took 7 years for Marie to get pregnant. And we still have that letter today of him describing what, and it's hilarious because, realistically, it took, I think, 7 years for the marriage to be consummated, and her brother visits them. He's like, here's what you're going to do. And just like,
here's what you're going to do. Oh, boy. He was mansplaining. He was mansplaining getting pregnant.
Yes, that's basically the whole letter. Um,
He mansplained getting pregnant. That's fantastic.
and,
Oh
and he,
my
he was
God.
explaining, and he explained it to Louis too. That's the thing. He's saying this is what you're gonna do, okay? Because yeah, we're pretty sure that Louis was the reason. Pretty obviously so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like, so here's what you're gonna do, okay? Um, it is probably one of the most funny and most embarrassing letters I have ever seen and read. Um, and
Oh,
more hilarious than you might think it should be.
oh.
Because we're in
Yes,
the
that's right.
12th century.
Are we certain this is a genuine letter and not like one of those horrible joke letters that they sometimes send each other?
All I know is that it actually happened. We do know he visited them and had a serious chat with them because the marriage had been consummated. And typically, that's not very good.
Yeah, right.
Because you need an heir, and realistically, if the marriage isn't consummated, is it really legal at this point? At this point, that's one of the big factors. So the letter
I
could have
mean,
been legal.
that was legal grounds for an annulment in the church, right? If you could prove that the marriage hadn't been consummated, you could just have it annulled, canceled, basically. So yeah, that is a very serious situation. That's very important.
It could have been, but on the other hand, I'm pretty sure I couldn't give you a source because I don't remember. But he did visit them and told Louis, yes, so this is how you're gonna do it. And it's
Right.
like, but
Okay, so good question. If I may ask, did nursing mothers wear this lace-up style of dress? Yes. So people are often asking me, how did nursing mothers or women who had nursing babes do it? Right? So by the 14th century, we start seeing front lacing gowns, which that's an obvious answer. How would you nurse a baby? You just unlace until you get access to the respective breast, and there you go. But it was more than just about being able to nurse, because this is the era of wet nurses. So a lot of well-heeled mothers did not nurse their own babies. They hired a wet nurse to do the nursing for them, because the idea was that they should ideally try to get pregnant as quickly as possible again, right? So not only did in the 15th century, in this era, you had front lacing dresses, but you also sometimes had a situation where you had side lacing on both sides and front lacing. And then not only could you have easy access to nursing implements, but also as the mother's stomach expands and contracts and expands and contracts in various states of pregnancy, you have that side lacing to really allow extra flexibility. We also see, though, to make it easier for women, nursing women, to access their breasts for nursing, we actually have depictions of the camicia, this smock, that actually has slits over the breasts, just over the breasts, so that you don't have to like reach in and pull out up over your collar. If your collar is not very big, you can't do that anyway. So it seems that maternity, you actually had a special nursing smock that actually had slits right over top of where the breasts were. And you don't have to worry about closing up that slit, because the dress, when it laces shut, it closes everything back together again. So yeah, that's how nursing women did it, whether they were the mothers or not. But I will re-emphasize that many patrician and noble women didn't nurse their own babies. They paid for a wet nurse. And sometimes women couldn't nurse. Just like now, there were women who could not nurse their babies. Their breasts simply didn't produce enough milk. They couldn't lactate properly. And that's why wet nursing was a big profession in the Middle Ages. And in fact, there's a story about a historical account in Florence in the 15th century of women who have given birth. They actually, this is a scam actually, they will turn lower women of lower socioeconomic status will turn their babies in at the local orphanage, so that the orphanage has to pay for the baby's upkeep, and then they will hire themselves to the orphanage as a wet nurse for their baby. Now, obviously, they don't tell the orphanage that it's their baby, but we know this happened because when the orphanages find out, they sue the mother for that money back, because it was a scam, right? The mother is trying to foist the cost of raising the child off on them while still staying basically the child's mother. So we actually know that there were women in 15th century Florence who would turn their freshly born babies in at the orphanage, and then a day later show up and ask if they needed to hire a wet nurse. Yeah, so that was a thing that actually happened. Yeah. Unfortunately, there seems to be, as there always is, some kind of delay in the comments, because why wouldn't there be? Yeah. So yeah, some very interesting. It's funny what court cases can reveal about daily life in the medieval world and the way people actually interacted, that you can't get from literature, and you can't get from the chronicles either, because chronicles are biased. Whereas law cases, the records from law cases tend to be pretty factual, pretty much like they have testimony from the witnesses. So this is what people actually said, and what they actually did, and what they were actually accused of doing, rather than chronicles, which are like fictional history, basically. Yeah, I would call most contemporary chronicles to be some kind of historical fiction in reality. Yeah. Oh my, it's like Moses. Yeah, yeah. Except, yeah, I wonder. Actually, it's funny you say that, Gelbeline. I wonder if that's what inspired these mothers to do that. They heard the story of Moses at mass one day, and and they thought to themselves, "Hey, wait a minute, you can do that." Cynical, yes, but there it is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Drink something. Drink more somethings. So you said, Mason, you said you have experimented with making Tudor pottages. Have you?
Yes.
That's the extent so far? What kind of pottages have you made?
Um, I've made so far. I've made, I think, I tried to perfect it one at first because I want to start on my channel a cooking series with Tutor recipes.
Mm.
I already announced it, but that was like a few months ago, back in October, and I still haven't done one. So I tried to do one. I tried to make soul cakes. I forgot to add a rising agent, and the little balls morph into molten liquid in the oven. And I'm like, well, guess the video's not getting posted. This one. So I made pottages for myself, for my family. They turned out really nice. So,
Well,
um,
when you say a rising agent, what is it you were? Did you forget you were talking about yeast? Because remember, chemical leaveners don't exist in this era.
no, it wasn't yeast. I say rising agent, but because what I had to do, the original recipe calls for, I believe, ale, because it has
Oh, yes, it's
of
naturally
course,
yeasty. Yeah, of
yeah.
course. Okay. Yep,
I can't do that.
got it.
Being 13 and all, so I was supposed to put in. I can't remember if it was baking powder or something. It was something like that because that was just going to help it, be stable.
So let me tell you that if you use one of those chemical leaveners, it will create a completely different product than would have been, because it's not the way that yeast leavens is a completely different way, and it has a different impact on the texture than the way a chemical leavener leavens. So if you really want to get close to it, I would get yeast. I would use yeast instead of baking soda or baking powder would be my recommendation.
Part of the reason I wanted to make those two was because it was so like it was. I think All Saints Day when I was making it, and that's when souling would kind of happen. So I was like, well, do this because it kind of fits the time I'm doing this. Never once did I
Right.
consider that. Yeah, maybe I should have waited. Um,
Well,
but
but so I know you're not allowed to buy ale, but you should be able to still cook with it. I mean, your parents could get it for you.
true. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's yeah.
I mean, I say this because as a 13-year-old, I was cooking with wine. um, you know,
It's hard
it's
to
not going.
find.
It won't make it alcoholic. I promise. That will all cook off, right? It won't be something you couldn't consume. It will go away. The alcohol component will.
But a lot of recipes, honestly, though, there's a lot of recipes. I should make a list of recipes I want to do because if I want to do this cooking series. This is something I want to do. I admit the idea of a heritage series. Not the first. There's another guy who did it. He doesn't do YouTube anymore, but he did it. So I'm going to be doing something similar. So I should make a list of what I'm going to make. I might make some form of pottage first because I've made that before, and I could probably do that.
Well, the next thing I'm going to be doing at the next medieval cooking party might be today, actually, later on today a little bit. Anyway, I'm going to be making a 15th century mincemeat pie because it's the holiday season, and one of the famous modern holiday pies is mincemeat. But of course, mincemeat pies these days don't, the holiday version anyway, don't generally have meat anymore. They're mostly just candied fruit and nuts. So I'm going to be demonstrating an actual mincemeat pie, a 15th century mincemeat pie. I think this recipe actually comes from the Pope's court in the 15th century, the papal court. So it'll be lamb. It's going to be a lamb mincemeat pie. And I'll be demonstrating the preparation of the meat. We'll be talking about the spices and how to build flavor in this pie. And of course, we'll talk about the differences between the modern mincemeat pie and this mincemeat pie, but it's going to be a 15th century mincemeat pie. So if anyone wants to see how a medieval mincemeat pie is made, keep your eye on the channel and click the notification bell. But if you're interested in watching medieval cooking content, I already have 3 episodes of medieval cooking on the live stream recordings. I think it's Medieval Cooking Party or something like that. So we delved in really in depth into the original recipe and really, talked about the process, what would have been available in a medieval kitchen, the cooking science behind all of the ingredients. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, if you like food, check that out.
One thing I like to say, this is a different topic now, but one thing when it comes to historical, what I call myself, I use the term performance historian is what I call myself, because it's basically the same thing, just different words. I think it just sounds more professional. And when people do stuff like that, living history, all that, when they do stuff like that on places like YouTube and TikTok, and they post stuff like that, I think so many criminally underrated channels do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And because realistically, one rule I go by, if you're looking for good history content on YouTube, you have to kind of dig deep into what's very, very underrated, because that's where you get a lot of the good stuff. And that's something
true.
Yeah, so many of them, and then they'll barely get anything, and it's just the content is just so good. One guy, he actually does live performances. I love him so much. He's amazing. He had a YouTube channel for a while during 2020, but I believe he lost the login or something. He couldn't sign back into it. And so he did Henry VIII. A big inspiration of mine, if you couldn't tell by the fact my channel is dedicated to Henry VIII. And I just loved his videos so much. His YouTube channel was King Henry, and I loved him so much. His videos were just amazing. And again, he does live performances, but that's the downside of living on a Canadian island. We don't get much stuff. So let me see if I can find him actually, because he was so criminally underrated when he was posting.
Yeah, I mean, people who find my channel are shocked at the depth and quality of my content, because YouTube does not reward quality content. Anyone who thinks that is deluding themselves. Yep. YouTube does not reward quality content. YouTube rewards sensationalist content, and this change actually happened in 2011 when they introduced the algorithm. Before that, there was no algorithm. Right. And so creators who actually got their start before 2011 had an easy shot at actually getting discovered and found. And that's why, people like Bernadette Banner and Morgan Donner, right, they have these massive followings because they got started before the algorithm started ruining it for everyone. So yeah, it took me forever to get my channel to the growth it is now. And I had to work hard. I had to post my videos everywhere on Facebook to get them any kind of viewing. And honestly, it's not my horizontal format content that's grown the channel. It's the live streams that have really done it for me. It's the shorts and the live streams. YouTube is not rewarding horizontal format content at all.
No.
If you look at my horizontal videos, they're fantastically researched, 50 to 100 hours of work in each of those videos. And they've got, after years of being up, they've got a couple of thousand views at maximum, right? Shorts, on the other hand, are getting pushed like cocaine on a street corner. So yeah, if you don't have sensationalist content, if it's not sexy, literally and metaphorically, YouTube won't award it. Just full stop.
And YouTube needs to get itself together, and its use of AI for absolutely everything.
Oh, God, I hate AI. I hate AI so much. So much.
And then, don't get me started on those AI slop history channels.
Oh my God. Terrible. The visuals are so awful. Like, that is not how people looked. And I get so irritated at my fellow actual proper history tubers who actually know their shit, and they still rely on AI to do the editing of their videos and put all those garbage images in there. I'm like, there are plenty of visuals from the era that you could use. Please use them.
Like, and then the AI Facebook pages and the AI, the AI Facebook pages, don't get me started. Like, I have to post my stuff. Every video, I have to post it or share it to Facebook. And I do it on Facebook. Gotta go to all the tutor groups. Gotta put all kinds of hashtags. Something that was barely related, just for a chance of someone seeing it.
Yep.
And then YouTube, it doesn't recommend the good shorts I post. It recommends all the crappy ones, or ones I did half asleep, or the ones that don't mean anything. Like, I once posted a blue someone auditioned for the channel. She does our channel now. And I posted it because she let us. And it got like 11,000 views overnight. Yeah. And then I get a nice video, a nice long form video, detailed, good images. It was my video on the English Reformation. It was Henry VIII telling the story. It's got 300 views, and I'm not mad about that, because 300 views is 300 views, right? That's still 300 more people who didn't know I existed until then. It's got 360 in 5 months, 21 likes, 16 comments, and that's it right there. Anyone wondering? This is me. And again, that's good, but to be fair, for a while there, I was getting some good views. Then, of course, it goes down, because YouTube won't recommend anyone good content anymore.
Nope.
I don't mean that. Like, I will put like a bunch of work into a video for like 5 people to see it, and then I'll post some crappy little short, and YouTube's like, "Here you go, everybody."
Yeah, no, I've been talking about this with Philip from Irish Medieval History, because he's noticed this trend as well, that unless you're one of the originals, we'll call them, creators who actually have had their channels for, a decade or more, and already had a following, there's a different set of rules for those channels. They get pushed differently. Their long format content does get pushed. But for those of us who are more late comers, YouTube will not push our horizontal content. It will briefly show it in the most giant mosaic of suggested options. And if it doesn't instantly become a click-through success, it shelves it forever, basically. So yeah, it's frustrating, which is why, having patrons and channel members is the only way I can keep doing this, because otherwise it's too expensive. It's too much of my time and effort to make a long format video that earns maybe $2 in revenue from YouTube. It's like, I think people also overestimate the amount that YouTube pays us creators. If you're not in the millions of views, you can't really make a living from just YouTube ad revenues at all. A video of mine that has 10,000 views of long format video, I think it's up to $30 total that it has earned since I launched it. Over all those 10,000 views, only $30 for a video that took 100 hours to make. So, that's the deal, that's why I've switched mostly to live stream. In case any of you are wondering, I haven't been doing any more polished videos really, or very rarely. It's because there's no return on investment for my time and effort. There just isn't, sadly.
And with YouTube, of course, one rule is you always got to post what you want to post, but you can't post what you want to post when YouTube won't let you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, yeah, you can post what you want to, but if you want your work to be seen, you have to play by the game rules or nothing. What's the point? Right? There's no point in posting to avoid.
And I mean, some people I've had at some points I just got bored with this channel because YouTube wasn't being very kind. I was going through one of those times where YouTube doesn't care about. And I had a friend say, "Just record it and upload it for yourself." I'm like, "No, I'm doing this for people, not just myself. This is so people can try something for people to use." Because I grew up with the internet, right? I'm 13 now, so I understand how much of a tool that can be in learning. And that's why I started all this, really, because I want people to be able to learn. And having to rely so much on shorts is kind of hard because your shorts can't just be stupid. They gotta have something if I wanted to meet my idea. But it's just hard to do it. And
yeah, I feel the same. I want my content to be meaningful and inspiring and useful. But some of the most useful, meaningful things I've produced, short or long, are just completely ignored. I can never tell. I can never tell what will please our master, the almighty algorithm, right? I can never really tell. Things I think should go viral don't. And then things where I'm like, okay, this is really esoteric, but it's somehow getting pushed really hard. So it's frustrating. And Jennifer, I just wanted to say thank you for that compliment. I really appreciate that. Thank you for letting me know that you've used my videos when researching your garb. It's good to know, because sometimes it's hard to know how much of what I'm putting out there is actually reaching its intended target, which is fellow creatives who want to create their own things. That's really awesome. Thank you for letting me know that.
And I've recently resorted to recording my videos. Usually I record them in YouTube, but I don't do that anymore. I record them outside of YouTube, and I put them into the YouTube thing to post. And I get a trending audio. I turn audio volume all the way down, and that way it helps with views a lot. Because if it's a trending audio, then yeah, it gets recommended, even if the audio is turned all the way down, my video volume's all the way up. But even then,
wow, that is so ridiculous. No, you're clever on you for doing that. The ridiculous part is that works.
The fact that happens, and I'm not the only person who does either. But
you know what? That's a new trick. I'm going to have to share that with Philip from Irish Medieval History. It never occurred to me to do that, because I always thought, well, the trending audio is going to completely ruin this video for my audience who don't want to hear, Metallica's death metal version of Enter Sandman while watching me sew. But okay. Just lay it on and turn it down, or don't want to listen to BTS while I'm droning on about medieval sexual practices, I guess.
You just go in there, and then when you hit the video, you just put in a video. Like, I'll put this one in, for instance. You hit next, and then add sound. Let's see, what's a random sound? We'll use this sound because that looks like it's good. And then you hit the volume thing.
Turn it down.
The audio down, my audio up, and then I post it. And it works sometimes, but even then, sometimes YouTube's not very happy with me. But it works sometimes it doesn't. But
brilliant. My hat is off to you, my dear, for being so clever at manipulating the algorithm in that manner. Well done. Well played. But also, it's ridiculous that we have to play this game. Why do we have to play this game? Right? This is absurd. This should not be. It just shouldn't. What time is it?
I'm out here trying to share stuff I've researched. This is what I was maybe 5, and then YouTube's like, yeah, we could do that. Or there's this person, they're a terrible human being, but they make us money. And I hate how YouTube doesn't regulate their creators. They'll have a creator who's just a piece of garbage. The content is probably horrible. And instead of being like, we should punish them, they're like, well, they're getting us money. But what they could do is maybe make their platform better for creators. And then more creators can grow, and then they'll make more money. But no, what do? They capitalize off of the tiny percentage of YouTubers who have enough subscribers that they money themselves. And many YouTubers nowadays, not well, I'm gonna say not many, but YouTube won't like their content, and they'll have to get so many ads. And there's a lot of some of them are doing pretty good, and there's some YouTubers out there who just kind of have to struggle with it and can't do anything about it. Especially if you're at that point where you're not small, but you're not well known or large, and you're kind of in that middle point. And then it's harder because no one's really like gonna sponsor you. No one's like it's you're in that middle point. It's not very good, and then that doesn't. And then you can't really grow because YouTube's like, oh wow, you're starting to do good. Screw you.
Yeah, we won't support you anymore. No, it's a problem. It's why I've considered, because of the amount of time it takes to make my polished video, I'll call them a video essay, my video essays. I've considered starting GoFundMes or Kickstarters for videos on specific topics, so that if people really want me to make a video on that topic, then they can support just that instead of the more generic patron or membership that kind of just supports my general living history work. Because I'll be honest, I don't have enough patrons or channel members to make it worth doing any more long format videos. Yeah, because for me, when I'm doing my research, I'm researching using primary sources only. I am usually going back in many cases to original manuscripts digitized online so I can read the original source. And it takes a long time to dig up that kind of information. And that's to say nothing of the effort it takes to edit, to film, script, film, and edit a nice polished video. It's a long process. And unfortunately the AI does not, all these AI or any of the software doesn't really do a good job with historical content. It's pretty good at other kinds of content, but when it auto edits historical content, no, it's bad. It's real bad.
And when people use it to write their scripts and get their facts, and it drives me.
My God.
Because it's so easily influenced. And it goes with what things you want to hear. That's the thing.
Yeah. It's incorrect information. The other thing is that for me, I'm a natural writer and I have a very specific voice. So I like to write with my sense of humor, and AI is not going to have my sense of humor. So if I were to use AI to write my scripts, then an entire dimension of what people like about my content is just gone automatically. So no, I don't use AI. I don't use AI visuals. I don't use AI to research, and I don't use AI to write my scripts. No.
And it's crazy that at this point in time, it's amazing that you don't do that. I would wish that would be the norm, but it's really not. And
It's
like
not.
I guess it's easily biased, not just on what you want to hear, but on the sources. Now this is a bit of a touchy topic, but from what I've seen, because unfortunately, first-hand resources are very hard to find for some things. So sometimes you got to kind of go off what you can find. Thanks a lot, Shakespeare, for ruining a lot of stuff. So you can't find any sources because it's all about your plays and your writings. Thank you for that. I have a thing with Shakespeare. It's not very fun, but yeah. So Catherine Parr. Now, I'm sure most people in the historical community know the whole thing between Princess Elizabeth and Thomas Seymour. But there's this persistent idea that Catherine Parr was fully aware of that and intentionally helped him. But
right.
There is, as far as I can find, no mention of her doing anything of the sort in any first-hand accounts. Again, I can't find many because everything's all from stuff like plays, and that's kind of hard. But I can't find Cat Ashley's testimony. Who knows if he even survives? But from historians I've checked out and seen, there's an agreement that it never really happens. And again, I'm not entirely sure because again, I wish I could find more first-hand sources, but because so many of them are in museums and only the top of the top historians ever get to see them. I wish you could digitize more.
So actually, a crap ton more has been digitized than you may realize. So people often ask me this: how is it I find all the primary sources I find? Here's the deal, guys. When you have a topic in which you're interested, find a good, reputable book written by a good historian on the topic, and then look at their footnotes and their works cited. that is where you can actually find the original sources that they're using. And what you'll often find is that they've been digitized, and often they've been transcribed, and sometimes they've been translated. So it's easier now than ever to get to these sources. If these sources had been available when I started this journey 30 plus years ago, God, I'd be so much further along. But yeah, for those who don't know, there's this great resource called internetarchive.org, which has digitized and published and made available for free thousands of historical works, including expense accounts and inventories, a lot of them thankfully transcribed and published by Viktorian historians who have, we should thank them and also revile them at the same time, because their contributions to history are complicated. Yeah, so if you are looking for primary sources, that's my first step. Find a good historian that wrote a book with crap tons of footnotes and crap tons of a huge works cited section. Then check out the footnotes and the works cited, and that's how you can get your primary sources.
Thank you for that. Because it's so hard to find some sources, because I did not realize how many have been digitized, but there's some that are so important that aren't. Now, some aren't even important, but I think should be digitized. One thing I want digitized, I don't think it'll ever happen, but I can dream. Anne Boleyn's Book of Hours. I want the full thing digitized. Will it ever happen? Probably not, but I think it's a cool concept.
Is it in a private collection?
I believe it belongs. It doesn't. I don't know. I wouldn't.
So here's the thing. If it's in the possession of any of the major British institutions, it either already has been digitized or it is being redigitized. So are you familiar with what happened at the British Library a couple of years ago?
I'm not sure if I knew more what you're saying.
So the British Library a couple of years ago had basically digitized their entire collection of manuscripts, the entire collection, and made it available online and searchable, but it got hacked and deleted. And so they've been slowly redigitizing their collection again. So if Anne Boleyn's Book of Hours is at the British Library, then it's in the queue to be redigitized. So so for those who don't know, the British Library has an amazing collection of digitized manuscripts. The Bibliothèque Nationale Française, the National Library of France, or the National French Library, also has a massive collection of fully digitized, not just manuscripts, but books. Like, they've digitized their entire collection, basically. And they're searchably digitized, which is even crazier for some of these manuscripts specifically. Let me see, other great online sources for digitized manuscripts. In Ireland, they've also digitized, the Irish National Library has digitized a great number of their manuscripts. Yeah, so if you do a search for digitized manuscript collections, you'll actually find that there's a lot more out there than you might think.
So Anne's Book of Hours is held at Hever Castle. So
even though it's held at Hever Castle, they may have handed it to the British Library to be digitized. So it could be that it was unfortunately one of the things that died a horrible death when those evil hackers who belong in a special circle of hell basically destroyed that whole collection.
They very much do. I am
special circle of hell.
Very special.
Okay. Oh, wow. Tanya, thank you for that fantastic donation. I really appreciate that. And I just like to remind all of my followers, please, to check out Mason's channel, King Henry's Royal Court. And if you enjoy Tutor content and a living history journey by a fellow up-and-coming aspiring reenactor, living historian, please subscribe. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, everyone. Right? It's a really important thing. Okay. Ban untrained general AI. Yep, I can absolutely agree with that 100%, Alina. Definitely. And Tanya, again, thank you for that super generous donation. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate all of you who've donated or become members today, really. Okay, well, we're coming up on the 3-hour mark. So Mason, do you have any final question for me?
me see. Okay, here's the question I had originally planned to end with. When you look back on the work you're doing now, what do you hope people remember or take away from it?
Yeah, that's a good one. I really like that question. Um, I am hoping that people will actually take away a sense of inspiration, and be inspired specifically to be creative, whether in a historical context or not, but especially in a historical context, to love to be inspired to explore the exciting stories of history and to bring them to life in a creative manner. So yeah, I'm hoping people will be inspired generally. I hope that's what they take away from, watching us talk, from watching my videos, from watching me do stupid things in front of the camera that involve any kind of historical creativity. I hope they're inspired to be creative. Yeah. I think that's what any of us can hope for. And especially in this world where we no longer, when we're so isolated from tactile experiences, because so many people exist now in only an artificial simulated environment, right? How many people spend their entire free time immersed in a virtual reality game, for instance? How many people just spend all of their time watching mindless content, whatever it is, right? How many people are no longer interacting with their fellow humans? They're just isolated from each other, right? So I'm hoping that they will take away, be inspired to experience the real world again and to help make it a more beautiful place. Yeah. That's what I hope. And I mean, like Achilles of old, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if I gain a certain kind of immortality that even after I die, these videos are out there and people continue enjoying them in some way or another for centuries to come, right? That's like the ultimate heroine's hope, is to attain immortality for good reasons, not for bad reasons.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, so that's my hope. Well, Mason, I have really enjoyed this chat with you today. Thank you so much for reaching out and for honoring me with the request to interview me. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Well, everyone, once again, if you've been enjoying this, please like and subscribe. I would like to thank Mason for this fantastic interview. Mason's channel is King Henry's Royal Court. Check it out for fun tutor content of a quality and researched type, right? Not like the usual garbage that is floating out there. And I would like to thank my channel members and my patrons for honoring me by supporting me financially. All of you who have left wonderful super tips, like Tanya, who've joined today. I'd like to thank also those of you who are part of my community and support me by hitting the like button, leaving comments. Susan, I see you. You were my super commenter par excellence, for sharing my videos and discussing my work with other people. I really am enjoying growing this community, and I'm enjoying having you all with me on the journey. So everyone, until next time, stay creative.